Right first.
I love to.
Good evening, everyone. This is
Bill, I
the
cook.
November 4th, 2010 version of the Goffstown Budget Committee. We are assembled to inquire of the two chiefs tonight some more information about their budgets. With that, does anyone have any preference of whether we do police or fire first? Why don't you come on up, chief? He looked at me first.
He was here first, too.
Oh, was he?
Yep.
I promise not to make funny remarks.
Why don't we just start off,
The clear.
Pat, because there's been a lot of inquiries to find out what would it, from your recommendation, what would happen, where would a 10% reduction from the 2010 appropriation look like? Okay, that's, I think if we start there, I think that'll take care of a lot of the questions that start right off. Tab 3, people. Oh, you know what I didn't do while you're working? Hey, Jen, can you start the roll, please, and we'll go counterclockwise?
Jen Getchell.
Kathy Samard.
Krista Garrison.
Guy Karen.
Dan Cloutier.
John Burt. Scott Gross.
Ivan Beliveau.
Paul Agros.
John Dillon.
Bill Gordon.
And our scribe, Joanne, is making her way in. That makes 4, 8, 10, 11 of us. I have not heard from Bill Bates, but I have, he said he was gonna try to be here, so if he doesn't make it, he's excused. Suzanne Tremblay let me know she couldn't be here. I have not heard from Bill Hart, and I'm not sure, I haven't heard from John Heichel either, okay?
Isn't Bill out of town?
Excuse me?
I thought Bill wanted to do telephone.
He said he was out of town. Bill Bates. Bill Bates.
Yes, that's what I said. Bill
I
Bates
do
said
now.
if he could be here either electronically or something, he would. He is excused.
Okay.
If he doesn't get here or doesn't call, he's excused.
I thought we were gonna do the telephone.
No, it's only Bill Hart and John Heichel I did not hear from, so they are not excused, they're absent. Okay, Chief.
Thank you. If I could, before we start, I feel imperative to address an item at the last budget meeting. There was a statement made that the survey, currently just finishing up, was done to be used as ammunition against the budget committee. I take offense to that on behalf of my department and myself. Since 1992, we've been doing surveys every 2 years. We take the information from those surveys, which are conducted free of charge by the students of St. Anselm's College, through their statistics and math departments. They do them without our oversight, free of charge again. They are sampled, validated, and then presented and tabulated to us. The concern is we're not using this information to go against anybody. We use it to better serve the people that we serve. We use it to construct our programs, to develop responses to crimes, and deploy our resources. That's the purpose of our survey, nothing else.
Duly noted, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions on that? Okay.
If it's all right, I'll give a snapshot of what a 10% cut would look like. And then if we want to go through the lines, we're able to do that as well.
Okay.
From the police department operations line, a 10% cut would be expected to remove $355,744. With that, if I eliminate 8 positions, the total of that elimination is $378,205. That calculation is done on an 8-month calculation. The budget would not be passed until March. With the layoffs coming, the notifications to the employees, the effective layoffs would be April 1st. It would not be January 1st. So I'm trying to make up this $355,000 in an 8-month period versus a 12-month period. With that money, cut, while it is greater than the amount requested, there are other issues that I must deal with. In addition to those cuts, I would also cut the crossing guard posts. I have those numbers here somewhere. For $38,000, I would cut medical supplies for $500, parades for $25.40, and that would be under the overtime line. Diversion for $4,500.
Diversion?
Diversion,
Can you explain that a little bit?
certainly. Diversion for juveniles that are caught with nonviolent offenses, truancy, criminal mischief, things of that sort, threatening. If it's not an act of violence, they go to diversion. It keeps them out of the court system. In addition to keeping the children out of the court system, it gives them a second bite at the apple, but also keeps my officers out of the court system. Okay, so the diversion, while it's $4,500, it is also something that redirects my officers away from court. And it's worked in conjunction with the Crispin House, who runs and oversees diversion through the Goffstown District Court. With that elimination, combined with the elimination of 8 officers, I'm at $378,205. Once that's done, I have to put back into my overtime line $211,064. The reason being, right now, if I have someone on vacation, if I have a sick call, if I have a mandatory training day, if I have someone in court, I go without filling those shifts. The shifts go empty. I have enough people on the road, or I have an adequate amount of people on the road to leave that shift vacant for a short amount of time. If these cuts come to fruition, I will have an officer safety issue that I will have to fill those positions with overtime. So again, we're mandated by the state, we're mandated by accreditation to fill certain requirements for training, use of force, firearms, things of that sort, physical fitness testing each year. Those, along with court appearances, along with vacation days, sick days, etc., are going to need me and force me to increase my overtime line. Once I eliminate or I reduce that subtotal line of $424,000 by 211, I'm at $213,210. I then eliminate the following items because of the reduction of personnel. $3,000 for bulletproof vest, $15,000 in fuel reduction. I eliminate animal control. I reduce court overtime because there are less officers by $7,500. I reduce overtime costs for training less officers by $8,000. I reduce uniforms by $3,500. I reduce employee development by $6,000. Eliminate pagers by $9,000 or $900. Excuse me. Eliminate crime prevention programs and equipment, and that would be the type of things where we were out the other night on Halloween, Halloween Safety Day, giving out the glow sticks, those type of programs. Reduce the vehicle maintenance line. With less officers driving less cars, we would eliminate that line, or we'd reduce that line by $6,500. We would eliminate the part-time building custodian for $13,000 a year. With that subtotal, in addition to the 213, is $73,757 for a total of $286,967. Additionally, there are $40,000 cut from the special duty line with the hope of going to the revolving account. That total is $326,967. That still puts me shy of the 10% cut.
You have do you have a one-page template or something that you had that you were reading some of these numbers from that?
I will give you this one. The one I was working off had the officers' names. I don't want to provide the names.
Oh, no, I
But,
wouldn't, cause this has nothing to do with that, so.
Yeah, I've got, it's one full page. I've just got one page, I apologize.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll either scan it or get it in, and I'll get it to you guys. Questions? Guy?
Yeah, Chief, on the 8 officers total, you got 378,000. What you,
Correct.
okay. We got the wage and benefits totals from the town a couple weeks ago. 8 patrolman level 1 positions without cafeteria is 458,000, not 378.
Mr. Karen, I went through each line that I was provided by the town hall,
I wonder if they're the
okay?
same.
And level 1, we are going way up above level 1, okay? And when we talk level 1, the number that I had originally given you was for an officer that is hired, married. Because we, married, if he's married and is on that
Okay.
family insurance, we have to budget for that. If we hire, and we have several officers that are single, their pay is substantially lower, their overall package
Okay.
is substantially lower than that number I had initially given you.
But these totals on the salaries of our actual officers are higher in the wage and salary benefit sheet that we got from the town. Wage benefits 2011 Board of Selectmen budget. And that's exclusive of cafeteria. There's 152,000, 54,000, 63, 52, 63, 56. When you add these all up, unless I've got the formula wrong here, oh, 24 to 31.
He said it was for 8 months, though.
Oh,
It's for 8 months.
you got it. That's where I forgot. Okay, 8 months.
Right.
Okay. I have a question on CIP too, but I don't know, for the chief, but I don't know if you wanna do that now.
Yeah, well, if we take the 378, you said April 1st. No.
Correct.
In my notes, that would be 9 months.
Yeah.
I'm,
May first?
May 1st, I'm sorry,
May 1st?
yes.
Okay. So we take the 378, divide by 2, multiply by 3, and we are probably close to 5, almost 6.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Further questions on that, Scott?
If that were to happen, if layoffs were to happen, did you factor in that you would also have to pay out for any unused time that has been accrued?
No, I did not.
Because that could be substantial.
Yes, it could.
You know, if you have accrued vacation or
vacation,
sick
you gotta
time.
pay it.
right.
I also have my communications line. That would simply come down to 2 dispatchers. Because of the lines as they are and a small number of lines, the total there would be 97,636, with an additional 27,606 left over for the 10% cut. I'd like to roll that back into the overtime line to cover if that was the case.
Further questions on that? If not, do you have any other part of presentation you wanted to give us, or
Do not.
we ready? Okay, guys, now's the time to get your budget books out. Look at those line items. Go ahead, Christie.
For level budget scenario, were there any staff reductions?
There is an elimination of 1 vacant position, I'm sorry, the unfunding of 1 vacant position we have now. I don't want to eliminate that position, I just don't want to fund it for this year, for next year, excuse me.
Is that what we're looking at the moment, is not funding the vacant position?
For the level funded, yes, that's included in there.
For a level funded, but not from what's being presented.
For the 10%, that vacant position is also included in the 8 officers.
Okay.
The other issue was the school resource officer. The town sent a letter to the school board to ask them to put it into their budget, which they have.
Does the budget we were given reflect that?
Should. I'm going to assume that, because I was told verbally that they did include it.
Do you know how much that was?
50.
I believe they're
Okay.
budgeting for 50.
50,000, around 50.
Yeah.
Right, what I'm looking at is that would make this pretty level funded from what the selectmen sent the budget committee, using that additional
Right.
revenue
Right.
as an offset. Okay.
I'm not, still not clear, is the selectmen's budget, which is pretty much close to level fund, does it have the vacant, funding for the vacant position in it?
No,
It does not?
No.
It's already been eliminated?
yes.
Okay.
Dan,
Yeah.
Chairman Allard presented his budget last night and did say that they were picking up the price of the resource officer.
Chief, you mentioned that you'd like to keep the vacant position. I'd like to hear more.
I'd like to keep it on the books. Funded, no. Presently, under the Bartel study, our department is understaffed by 3 officers.
Okay.
To eliminate that position altogether, and I understand we're in difficult times economically, willing to step back from that at this point, this year. But it's a workload issue. I've got people running 2 officers on a midnight shift. It's not safe out there. We're running in, last night alone, we had a man with a gun call over at the Irving station. I got 2 guys on. Okay,
Yeah.
that's their backup.
But if you're not funding it, then I don't understand the difference between that and eliminating.
Let me ask this question. What does it take to add a position count?
I'm not following your question.
You're a selectman. If someone says, hey, I want to add a new position. Is there
Budgeted.
The position is budgeted, but it's unfunded. I can only tell you how it works at
Well,
the state
I would
level.
say sometimes it would be a vote to add a position,
Okay.
by the
So
Board of
basically,
Selectmen.
but if the vote isn't there, basically you don't have to deal with adding a position, you have to deal with the funding of it. Suppose a grant comes in, you go out there and say, it's, probably in a town business, it's not as definitive as in a state. At the state level, only the legislature creates the positions. There is certain laws that allow for creation of temporary positions until the next budget that have to be confirmed. And so I'm not sure if it's,
We wouldn't even be able to eliminate it then, right? It's not our,
actually, no, if we think, well,
I mean, we may
actually,
unfunded, but.
if it's unfunded and the position's there, I would say that if there was something that would happen with the budget and you didn't need some money and you could bring someone in 2 months early, then you could move some money back up into that line and have that position. Or if another position went vacant that was different, and you wanted to have that person and hire that person, because they all have steps, they all have grades, they all have things. So it's a management tool more than anything else. Plus, this committee would have very little say on
Right.
quantity of positions, so for us, it's somewhat
So
irrelevant.
It's not in the budget anyway.
No, it's not in the
Okay.
budget. We're allocated for 30.
Okay.
At this point, I'd like to keep that allocation and fund 29.
In context for that, Scott, I am looking for that offsetting revenue, and I have not found it in tab 9 where the revenues.
Yes, I was gonna mention that, there's a couple of things, I talked to Guy about this with regard to, say, debt service is a good example. That debt service did not have, 2011 default budget, the Board of Selectmen, and, department head, so I have some updated numbers for you that I'll provide to you.
Okay, it's on the summary sheet.
Yeah, but
It's not in the admin section, though. It's
Yeah.
Right,
zeroed
it's
out.
it's on the summary sheet, which, and
it's
so if you
separate.
added all the detail, I mean, does the detail add to this number, or does this number, I haven't gone in and done the math yet, so.
The debt service spreadsheet we got adds up. And if you plug those numbers into the admin spreadsheet, everything balances out.
Okay. So you're saying that we should see a $50,000 revenue
Yeah,
someplace?
yes.
Okay, as an adjustment somewhere. Okay. Further questions for the chief? Paul?
The presentation a few Saturdays ago, I know you had mentioned that you train your patrolmen as detectives, or they receive a level of training that would make them competent detectives.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could give us an idea, just roughly, of the magnitude of the scale of any additional costs associated with that training, if any.
Part of our FTO program, it's a 12-week program accepted nationally, under the I believe it's the San Diego model. It's a 12-week program. They start from soup to nuts, what we do in the field and how we do it. For our agency, what we do is we train in those 12 weeks, and we build upon what's learned at the academy. We teach the actual lifting of fingerprints, where another department may not teach how to lift fingerprints. The dust alone is probably $4 or $5 for a bottle this big, and you use a small bit of dust, minor. Things of that sort. Pictures, we do have cameras. I think they're $120, basically throwaway digital cameras. Each cruiser has them. Teach them how to take pictures, how to measure, put a ruler next to them, things of that sort. It's not a major crime scene or CSI or anything like that.
Okay, and would all of that come under would that be under employee development, or?
That would be under employee development, that would be under, crime lab expenses. But that's not solely those.
Okay, thank you.
Good, John.
Thank you, Chief. I was just wondering on the diversion, it's budgeted for $4,500. The state doesn't pay that, each town does?
No, they do not, correct.
Because I was under the impression I must be wrong. Because I was just, I mean, it's a good program. You know,
Yes, it is.
it's a very good program, you know, because when a kid messes up just minor, he shouldn't get in
You
trouble.
mind, while we're on diversion, I ask another question on
Yes.
that? You mind? or you
No,
don't
no,
mind?
go
Okay.
ahead.
What are the costs involved in what a diversion is? I am totally, I have no idea.
We have a contract with Crispin House, and Crispin House manages diversion.
Okay.
Okay, what their costs are, I don't know. But what they do is they follow through, they'll meet with the child, meet with the family, they'll do follow-up visits, they'll recommend, possibly counseling. Do they pay for it? I don't know, and I apologize, I just don't know. But they,
We pay Crispin House.
we pay Crispin House, and then they follow through.
Is it a set fee, or?
I just signed off on a bill today, I believe it was $12.50 every quarter or something like
And
that.
that's where this 45 is?
Correct.
Comes from, is to the Crispin House.
And, if I may?
Okay, I'd like
Quickly,
to.
the bad news is that Crispin's House lost a lot of funding, and they'll be, needing to get assistance from the community, perhaps through donations. The state cut their funding. So unless they get an infusion of donations, they may cease to exist. So there'll be more to come on that.
Okay. When you were talking about your ability or a plan for a 10%, you had mentioned that would kind of go away, but if that went away, then there would be more, I would presume, arrests of the underage?
No,
or-
that's not correct.
Okay, help me out there.
To take someone to diversion, they already have a charge on them.
Okay,
What we are doing is diverting them away from the court system over to diversion. So from going away from the court, I'm not paying officers to show up in the court
that's,
for trials.
right, that's where I was leading to.
Right.
And if we would not do diversion, but would need to do the court, is there any idea of what that switch is? How much would we be paying the officers or needing to pay the officers for their time in court? I know that's a dart, but that's
It's a dart.
about
I
everything
can say
we've
that
got here.
currently, under this current contract, which expires this year, okay, we're paying 3-hour court minimums. Okay, so if you get called into court, you go to court for 3-hour minimum.
And do you have a quantity in 2009 and year-to-date 2010 of any diversion individuals that would have led us, where an officer would have had to, how many times would that 3-hour minimum have come into play?
They all would, all of them, and do I have an exact number of how many have gone to diversion? No, I don't. I can get that for you. But each time, if they had gone to court, the officer would have been compelled to go as well.
Right, so I'm saying, you know, is the time that we pay the officer at court based on their salaries?
Time and a half.
And what's an average time and a half salary. If we just had to throw out a number.
3705.
Okay, plus, let's say FICA taxes or Medicaid or something like that, so that's easy, like $40 an hour. And that's 120, we could throw out 120, 125. So if there was, $12.50 a quarter, so that would be 40 kids a year.
Yes.
And would you say that we easily have 40 kids a year that we divert?
It comes and goes.
It does.
I mean, sometimes we do and sometimes we don't.
Right.
If we have violent offenders, they don't go to diversion, that's one of
Right.
it. So, again,
Right.
it's a hard call on that one.
Do we have any, I'm almost done. Do we have any statistics of how well the program is working versus the court system?
15 years ago, I worked juvenile, and we had great success back then. It's a chance for the kids to interact with the victims. Usually there's an apology letter, showing up at the door apologizing, community service attached to it. So there's a little bit more building into the community versus keeping them away. So, yes, in the past, there's been great success with it.
Okay.
Do I have numbers? No, I don't.
Still got a few more, but.
Oh, that's true, Ivan, I kinda jumped in
All
on
right,
John.
thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, John, sorry.
No, Chief, the diversion program's a great program, I hope it stays. The other was, the animal control, what does that entail? You know, I see where, you know, it's usually budgeted 3,200 and you spend about 60, if I am reading it right. And I was just wondering what it, you know, is it like if somebody calls on a dog, or is that what?
Last year, we cut it because we eliminated picking up dead animals. So if you have a dead skunk in front of your house, if you want to pick it up, have at it. If you want it to stay there, it will stay there. We no longer provide that. And the reason being, we found that we had to have officers have shots, rabies shots, to deal with dead animals. A lot of people didn't want to deal with that, okay? The cost associated with that. And then we had one town employee from the highway department that was coming out and doing that on straight time. It was a labor issue. He came to work for the town, he had to be paid time and a half. So that would have bumped up my budget even more. So we cut back on that. Presently, what the animal thing is feeding, sheltering, and caring for animals, and we try to get it back, okay, through fines, et cetera, for daily care. I believe we charge $40 a day, or something of that sort. If a moose gets hit on the bypass, we gotta get it out of there. How do we get it out of there? Animal control. Dog bites. Under state law, we have to quarantine a dog that does not have rabies. Okay, for I believe it's 7 or 10 days. Once it's quarantined, it gets released to the owner to have it checked by a vet at the owner's expense. But for those 10 days, we still have to shelter it, care for it, have someone go down and feed it.
And where do you shelter them? You're not at the department?
We shelter them at the town kennel.
Oh, they, oh,
Recycling center.
all right.
No, it's physically located at the same entrance. You would go
Okay.
left to the animal shelter, you'd go right for,
All right. Oh, I thought the highway department picked up dead animals, so I was just curious on that. The other is, the property insurance is, 62 and, you know, 69,000, and now it's going up to 79,000. Do you get it through the LGC?
Yes.
Have you ever looked elsewhere other than the LGC?
It's through, the whole town does it as a group.
Okay. Oh,
the
so-
chief has no,
Okay.
has little or any control over that line. In fact, the number shows up and he says, oh, okay, pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then the
Good
other,
question for Sue next week on Tuesday, if you'd like.
all right.
I do know that they plan on looking at other vendors next year. I believe it's up this year or next year. And
All right.
the exact, I can't give you numbers or times.
All right, the other is the maintenance building,
By the way, he's on page 3, the second from the bottom item.
yeah, the maintenance building, charge for the building is, 14,000.
Yes.
You know, what does that entail? I'm just, you know, it's a fairly new building, good-looking building.
It's It's well over 20 years old.
So that'll-
Used 24/7. It is in dire need of some help.
Doors and stuff like that.
Presently, I just signed off, I believe it was on $1,400 for a new rear door, steel door. So these aren't showing up here. I just also, I believe, an $800, we had a leak coming underneath the sill on the back door, or next to the back door. It was rot coming off the roof.
I know you got water troubles down cellar.
So those are the types of things that we're trying to get done. It's also, we kind of hold those off to the end, because as we go and the money runs out, we make adjustments there. What's a must-have and a would like on, I mean, we need to get our building maintained and up to date, consistent with safety standards, okay? Last year at the end, we were able to put in a handicap access button, okay? A push button to come in for wheelchairs, et cetera. And we had some money left over.
And on the, I think once again, this is probably for Sue then, would be the healthcare.
Yeah,
You don't do any of that, even in negotiations?
absolutely in negotiations, but I can't discuss that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, but where do you pick your healthcare? I mean,
We're
That's-
talking about from the provider?
yeah.
I think the selectmen pick a provider, but the benefits contained within the bargaining agreement would have to be purchased from somewhere. Does that make sense, Scott?
I can, if you'd like, it's LGC is more like a broker. They deal with multiple companies, and the way that most of the bargaining units, most of the clauses have in them that it's the average of 3 different healthcare plans. One of them is a point of service plan, one of them is an HMO, and the other one I think is a PPO plan. So it takes the average of 3. That's for all of the, and that's not only for the police, but that's also for all of the other bargaining units and all of the non-union employees as well.
And then they vote on that it's gonna be, this particular insurance that they want.
It's a,
The contracts and the personnel plans specify that it's the average of 3 different plans, and then the selectmen can choose through a menu of different plans that LGC offers, with varying deductibles and co-pays and things of that nature.
Well, I was just wondering if they're looking at the, in 14 of switching over to the Obamacare healthcare.
We know about as much as anybody else around this table knows about what that's gonna look like. All we know.
Especially after last Tuesday.
Right. All we know at this point is that there are changes that are in effect, not only for the town, but for all of us around this room who hopefully have health care. And in terms of the, no limitation on if you have you cannot be, if you have a pre-existing condition, extension of coverage for children up to the age of 26. All those are in effect for this coming year. And that would be regardless of whether it's the towns or anything private. Everybody has to comply with that.
And then the final thing, Chief, and thank you for your time, is the $3,000 in reduction of the bulletproof vest if the town voted on, the 10% reduction. That is for the police officers that would not be there. It's not for the current officers, because I'm assuming, you wouldn't put an officer out without the option of a bulletproof vest.
correct, we would not.
Okay, thank you.
The bulletproof vest, just for clarification, I believe there's $6,000 in this year's budget.
Yes.
That $6,000 for initial outlay, we get reimbursed by the DOJ for half of that. So if we do put out $6,000, we'll recover $3,000 from DOJ.
How many does 6,000 buy?
10,
10, okay.
roughly,
And what's the life expectancy of them?
5 years.
Really, that's.
They're considered under DOJ standards to no longer be effective at 5 years.
I know, well, and technology changes, make them lighter, I guess. All right, thank you, Chief.
And we have to keep remembering that this is what we call a gross appropriation. So even though that the net cost of the town would be 3,000, as this example was, you still have to appropriate the entire 6,000. Okay? because we have to have enough money to actually pay the entire bill, and then the revenue comes on the revenue side. Ivan, you were next.
Yeah, let me just say in general, before I start on the money thing, I had shared with the chief in private how pleased I was with an interaction I had with the police department. It was just outstanding, the performance. And I would say in general, it's been a banner year for me interacting with the police department under circumstances that were not always, I'm sure, to our liking. And I was just extraordinarily pleased with the quality and professionalism, so I just wanted to say that publicly.
Thank you.
None of this has anything to do with quality and performance. I just wanted to make that clear and so forth. But in trying, it's a tough year for reasons we've talked about, but I'm just trying to understand, and I'm looking at some numbers that the LGC prints out. I mean, you have lots of data on your own department and so forth. The LGC collects these for all towns, and this data is available. You can go online and look at this. And what so sometimes it's helpful to try and get some metrics and determine how we stand with other communities. I mean, have you sort of done this in general?
Yes, we have in the past.
Because, for instance, towns from 15 to 25,000 in population, there's 9 of them, but, I mean, we sort of compare ourselves to Bedford, Goffstown, Hampton. The population from those 3 communities is 15 to 20,000. So they're in the same ballpark. And even Hampton. And if we look at the number of positions, Bedford has 19 full-time firemen, policemen. We have 18. Hampton has 21 full-time. But the budgets are different. And Bedford has about $500,000 less in total
Absolutely.
budget.
Yeah, we know that, you want to tackle that one?
We have found in past years, they did a little sneaky thing in Bedford where all payroll taxes and health insurance is paid out of a
Different line.
administrative department. So
okay.
it's not an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah.
Okay.
Done that with the fire department, I think last year.
That
maybe
is-
before.
When you look at retirement at 315,000, add, let's see, Medicare at 33 and FICA at 21, and, the employee retirement for the people there, plus benefits are
Big.
528,000. It's, really brings the budget down to almost, let's say, 2.5 million.
So what you're saying is this data for the most part is
It's not,
valueless?
it doesn't have
opposed
as
to
much
it.
value as you would probably want to.
Here's where it's used. I think it is used for when you start talking about
Number of officers.
number of officers. When you are entering into negotiations, yeah, you look at that to say, okay, where are we in terms of the hourly rate for our officers? You look at Manchester,
No,
who we compete with,
yeah.
but when you look at, say, total budget, it's not very reliable because towns budget certain components in different areas. And Bedford is a prime example of that. They don't put their benefits and FICA and other things in the police or fire budgets. They put them in a separate, like, administrative type budget,
Okay.
and it skews the overall number, so.
So if I say Laconia has a population very much the same, and it's got 24 full-time officers, and the budget is about the same, that doesn't mean anything. Or there's nothing to be learned about why they have 6 more officers at about the
Without
same-
further study.
Without further
Without
study.
taking those numbers on face value, no.
No, we
We
don't.
couldn't really make a very good comparison. I
I
apologize.
tried.
Yeah, no,
I
no,
have
it's
that,
not-
I have that book on my desk, on my credenza.
Yeah.
I refer to it on occasion. I don't live and die by it.
It's not, it doesn't hurt. I mean, it's just data that you have to kind of weed through, and it gives you some benchmarks here and there, but it's not something it is not an apples to apples to apples comparison. You go from town
understand.
to town, unfortunately.
Additionally, for example, Bedford now has the revolving account. So all their detail money is not in their budget.
Right.
But but I mean, somehow this all comes out, even though it's somewhere else, it still comes out in a total general budget. So even though it may not be, in the total police budget, it's still in the total budget,
Should be, yes.
so.
But let me preface that, or let me, if, you have to look at all the warrant articles, because they may have, like, we used to have the road program in a separate warrant article, so when you looked at the budget, and you tried to compare it to another community who rolled theirs into their CIP, you couldn't compare it, you'd have to add 2 Goffstown warrants, so you gotta be careful there as well. You have to look at the whole kit and caboodle, that's where it's tough, and I agree with Scott, looking at some of the dynamics, because I just don't like doing those comparisons sometimes without getting all the information. I've done too many of them over the years, and you find out that, well, yeah, but we pick up trash on the side of the road with a truck. If you live in that community, you have to put it in the back of your truck, and heavens that the truck isn't borrowed from your brother who lives in the other community, and you can't get a dump sticker because it's not your truck. So, I mean, you heard that joke, huh? We'll talk about that later. Further questions, Ivan?
No, I've run out of gas.
Gonna switch back over to Guy.
I just got a question on CIP.
We haven't, okay. Was everybody, we were talking about police operations, we hadn't quite segued to police emergency or
Oh, I
communications or
do have one
CIP.
on communications.
So, I mean, it's anywhere in a police budget you want, so don't think that we are sticking to just operations. Look at all of the numbers, please. Okay, so you wanna do CIP? Just give us a
I've
tab
got one
and a
quick
place.
question on police communications before the CIP thing.
Okay, that'd be great.
You have there's a line here, chief, maintenance charges of 21,000, which is substantially higher than our current rate of maintenance charges, and the amount from last year, I thought maybe you could clarify why that's so high?
54330.
54330 on police communications. In '09, the actuals were 13,000, and this year so far it's 4,800. I was just wondering why the amount was 21,000.
Well, in '09 was 21,000. Expended was 13.
That's what I said, the actuals, yeah.
Okay. We budgeted for 21 this year.
Is that maintenance of equipment, or?
Maintenance of equipment.
Okay.
It's not building maintenance or the room maintenance or anything like that.
Okay.
'08, when I first took over as chief, we had that accident in front of the station. It took out the phone lines,
I remember that.
which blew up all the phones, which blew up all the electronics that went with the phones. That was substantial. Did we try to recover it through insurance? Absolutely. However, we still have to get that repaired.
Sure. Yeah, but it was unclear to me whether this had to do with the building or if it was your actual equipment.
This is for the actual communications equipment.
Okay, great. Thank you.
One of the things that, in your budget books, when you look at the paper, there's only so much room in that,
Colin?
description column that it truncates when it prints. If you go to the spreadsheet and widen it out, it's got most often, I haven't seen it where it hasn't, if you make it wider, you will see a more substantial explanation,
There it
if
is.
that helps. You
And CIP
wanna do
question?
CIP tab 8?
On the 3 replacement cruisers, chief,
Yes,
Oh, there's the debt service.
you mentioned they're gonna be Crown Vics again this year, right?
yes.
Okay.
No, I'm talking about the paper.
When would they go into service?
Send it to you electronically.
Because I'm sure you gotta order them or something,
What,
right?
what we do is we put in what we call a tentative order. We say, look, we are looking to purchase 3, and we'll be making that call very soon.
Okay.
We're looking to purchase 3. It all depends on the budget. That's the caveat that we put with that it depends on the passage of the budget.
Let's presume that the 3 police cruisers are included in CIP. When would they go into service?
We would receive them after the town meeting,
Shortly after?
shortly after, because
Okay.
by the time town meeting kicks in, they're already on the lot at Hillsborough.
Okay.
Which has the state.
So mid-March, perhaps? Okay.
The problem with that is there's 3 people, or there's Ossipee Mountain Electronics, MHQ down in Mass, and then Adamson down in Mass, that do this professionally.
Okay.
The only thing with that is, we and everyone and our brother is getting police cruisers at the same exact time.
Right.
So if you get in there early, you're okay.
Okay.
A week or two delay, you may be more than a month, maybe a month delay.
Okay, 'cause I mean, I was less interested in that, but I mean, roughly, like, April 1 is a good
A-
presumption.
April 15th.
Could you provide for us, and I don't, you probably don't have this with you now, you're replacing 3 Crown Vics with these new ones.
Correct.
Could you provide us with the years of those cars? The current mileage, and then, I guess, the dates they went into service?
I might be able to do that for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll be,
we were
well,
talking
it's in
about something.
CIP, I mean, it'll be off, you know, it'll be a little more, but, just bear with me here. First one is, I assume it's a car number 333, I'm sorry, it's car number 18. It's a 2006. And as of August, it had 77,000 miles on it. The next one is car 4, again at 2006, with same thing, 77. I'm rounding up.
No,
It was
that's fine.
76,993. And then the next one was a 2007. It was car number 2, and that back 3 or 4 months ago had 81,000 miles on it.
Okay, that gives us an idea of how much would actually be on them once they actually get replaced.
We roughly 33,000 miles per year.
Per year, per car?
18 is going to be a little higher. It is a sergeant's vehicle. Okay? Sergeants run 24/7 with that vehicle. So when one sergeant gets off, the other one gets in it, and then the other one gets in it,
Gotcha.
and the other one gets in it. So that's why it's gonna bump it up.
All right, thanks.
So how much is the mileage on the sergeant's car?
It's 77 now,
18.
right?
77 now, and I have those updated numbers. I don't have them with me. I
You
think
said it's like 33 a year for a
roughly
normal.
33 a year.
Is that for the sergeants or for the normal cars?
Normal cars.
But the sergeants are a little more, so you'd figure it could be 43 or?
Yes, and I'm sorry, 18
more than the 33?
18 right now is a secondary SRO car. Okay? 18 was a sergeant car.
Oh, number 18.
Yeah, car.
I'm sorry.
Car.
I'm looking at 18,000.
The reason that number, we've taken it off as a first response vehicle, moved into the SRO line, so it had higher numbers and we kinda circled it down, so.
Okay.
Dan,
Thank
can I
you,
just
Chief.
clarify my comment?
Yeah, please.
This was printed on 8/24/2010, but I'm gonna assume that these numbers are probably when CIP starts, so I'm gonna assume that's probably, it could have been June.
July,
So
sure.
they could be even higher.
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
The
it's
mileage.
gonna be much
They
higher.
absolutely are, I wanna say 10 to 12,000 more. I had them done up and I apologize, I don't have them.
Do they go to different departments when they're done? When they come out of service, out of your service?
We usually cycle them to highway.
Highway, okay.
If they're serviceable, they'll use them for their interns, to do studies, et cetera, engineers to get around from point A to point B.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
Christie?
My question is, how many vehicles in your department, how many people take them home? Who does, and why? What is the reasoning?
Two take them home, myself and the captain. I take them home because I spend more time here than at home. Sorry. And then the captain is also my second in command. He responds on all major calls from his home in Goffstown. And he'll take immediate control if necessary. The two main command officers will have them. On every 4th week, a lieutenant will take one home for a week when they're on call. Because we have a command staff officer on call every week.
Those 2 cars, Chief, do they have bar lights on top?
No, they do not.
Okay. Curious about that.
Have you seen them in your neighborhood or something?
Well, I've seen them, I've seen them often, actually.
No, I'm
How
just-
many,
In his driveway.
actually, how many cars do you have that don't have the bar
Can I
lights?
do a follow-up?
I think 4. 4 or 5.
Do they have, they must have grill lights then?
They have lights.
Yeah.
They're all lit cruisers.
Follow up, Christie.
So what are the age of those vehicles, or how often are those replaced?
Those, again, we rotate The newer cars go on the front line, they'll stay there for a year or two, and they'll get moved out. If you look right now, car one, is mine, so that'd be number, it looks like 13 if that's the same one. And I've got, I think, 77,000 on mine now, and that will not be replaced, so I turned mine in, I believe it was last year, or the year before, it had 112,000 on it.
So out of 30 employees, only 2 are taking home cars. Thank you.
So you basically, you rotate out the oldest cars.
Absolutely,
Okay.
and we'll take the older ones, move them into detectives, non-emergency response vehicles, so that they're not responding code 3,
Right.
traffic, et cetera. Less use, less wear and tear on them.
And who does the repairs on them?
Highway Department,
They do.
for the most part, if it's under warranty, unique Ford, it's a $50 deductible.
Continue, Christie, or,
No, that was my follow-up.
okay. Paul?
Yes, back under operations, I just had a question. If you could just shed a little more light on the special duty wages line.
Yes.
I just, what it is.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
Special duties, and I think Mr. Burt can attest to the fact that at the elections and the debates at St. A's, that's a special duty. Security of personnel, et cetera, they pay for us. There's a set fee, it's $40 an hour. The officer receives a portion of that. The rest goes towards administrative cost, it goes towards insurance, retirement, et cetera, offset those costs.
Okay, so you're saying there are revenues that offset this line?
Yes,
Is it dollar for dollar, or?
it's very close as we speak because of the downshifting of the retirement system.
Okay, thank you.
And under state law, just FYI, it cannot be a moneymaker,
Okay.
okay?
And one step further, this is the line that you're trying to get into the
Revolving account.
revolving account.
Correct.
Anybody wanna know what the revolving account would be? Darn, I thought Scott would do a good job with that one.
Yeah, I do.
Why don't we all,
Do we
why don't you
have
tell them
one?
what you guys, are you thinking?
Do we
of-
have one yet?
I don't think we have
Been
one.
the chief has proposed it, the board.
I can address it if you want it.
Yeah, if you want, I'll
Good
just chime in.
idea.
on it.
A revolving account, I'll do a little history first. Back in the '08 elections, we had expended 75 or 80% of our entire special detail line by February with the presidential debates at St. A's. That money still needs to come out of my budget from February on through traffic season and construction season and everything else. Where does that money come from? Because the income comes back into the general fund. Doesn't come back into my budget. The revolving account, what that will do is allow all details to be paid out and received into that account. So what comes in goes out. If there is any left over under the law, it must be spent on related activities. For instance, traffic vest, light bar repair, wands, stop signs, the moving stop signs,
Barricades, that type of stuff.
barricades, those types of things, something for traffic control. Does that make sense? So it's a give and take and it stays out of there. For instance, the benefit is there is a presidential election coming up in a few years. I don't wanna get caught with my pants down. I will budget a very large amount of money if the revolving account doesn't come in. If we do not realize that revenue, there'll be a shortfall in revenue. If it's a revolving account, it's a wash. What comes in, goes out.
The only issue is that in order to, when you establish one, you have to have a certain
Seed
sum of
fund,
money.
basically.
Pretty much to get it going, because you have to pay out, even though your receivable might be a little bit late, so we're gonna have to fund it. You're not gonna be able to totally eliminate special detail from the budget in the first year, but in the subsequent years, it will not be in the budget. But you have to allocate some money in the first year to pay for those first 2 or 3 months of special details until you get the receivables in.
You mentioned this was brought up to the Board of Selectmen.
yeah.
What was the disposition?
I believe we're gonna proceed with it, that's where,
That's my understanding
yeah.
of it.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
So, just to, I just didn't understand, I guess, 100%. So when I hired a couple officers to do, to do detail at my event, when I wrote that check, it goes back into the general fund.
Correct.
And when the presidential debate's here, that goes back into the general, and you've already spent that money on
Out of-
payroll and et cetera.
Out of my budget.
Out of your budget. Okay.
That was the concept I talked about earlier about what we call gross appropriation. You have to have something here, even though it doesn't affect the taxpayers, okay, through the raising of taxes, because every bit of that money that's expended comes in towards revenue. They have to have an authority to spend it. And once that goes away, the authority to spend disappears. In a revolving fund, what you have is the opportunity is you can seed it with, let's say, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, okay? So that's kinda like your receivables. When the next $10,000 come in, you now have authority to spend another $10,000. And so when somebody pays you and they pay you another $10,000, you now have the authority of spending. So the budget always increases, so to speak, with the cycling of the revenue.
But they can't roll it over to the next year.
Oh, yeah, they can. That's the whole
Absolutely.
point. It keeps rolling.
Oh, I thought you said you had to spend it by the
You
end of the
can't
year.
have, you can't have excess funds in there, it can't be like
You
a,
can't, this can't be, we're gonna charge $500 for a detail for an hour. We're gonna pay the officer $30,
Right.
and we're gonna keep the 470.
Yeah.
It can't be that.
Okay.
If
But-
if it's off at 50 cents or an hour, or something, depending on the wages, et cetera, that's acceptable, because it's an average.
You're only supposed to charge the customer your cost.
Right.
Well, why
No
doesn't,
profit.
when I write the check for the two officers that I hired, why doesn't it just go back to you? Why can't we just do that?
State law has to go into the general fund.
That's what a revolving fund is.
mechanism to
revolving
allow
fund.
it.
That's what the revolving fund is, so
Okay.
to speak. Because this is called an appropriation. In fund accounting in a government, you cannot commit to spending a dollar unless you've been given authority to spend that dollar. And that authority comes with the passing of a budget. So at the point now, it's a bottom line budget, so let me go to the very total page, all right? So for some reason, the budget is, the adopted budget, $19,695,041.
Yes.
As soon as something happens and they wanna spend $19,695.42, they can't. That's not allowed. There's other things in the RSA where you go to the Department of Revenue, you have another meeting, there are ways to do it, but you have to go through the process to get permission. And that usually comes from either the governing body petitioning to have a public hearing and to go through the whole thing, 'cause you
Comes to
just.
budget committee too, a lot of times.
It does have to come to the budget committee depending on what it is. That, with a revolving fund, what you can do is because that comes to a point where you've been permissioned to have a revolving fund. You can now, if there's money in the fund, it's not necessarily if you have money, you have to seed it with something. But as long as you're billing and you get your money back, you always have permission to do the job. It's not limited to a certain number.
Up to 30,000, but then if they have 31,000 in there at the end of the year, they have to get rid of 1,000 of it.
The $1,000 then has to say, what is that 1,000 for? Do we overcharge by $1,000?
Yeah.
But that also includes repaying for FICA taxes and all that other stuff. It's all on the books, so to speak. It's all what Janice would do on the books, but then you're gonna say, hey, gee whiz, and they have to charge a little more, just not the exact salaries, because the signs do break. They do need barricades. The light bars, because you have a cruiser there, and if you're paying for the lights, if they, some of that has to go with replacing of the bulbs or other items, so. There is a certain amount to be able to use for those kind of expenditures.
No, they did a great job, so.
And were you all set? Because then I have John, who's been waving at me for a while now, and then we'll come over to Bill and back over to Ivan. Go ahead, John.
Chief, thank you. How much you looking to seed this account with?
I believe we talked 40,000 or 50,000. The problem stands, it's gotta go before, on a warrant article.
meeting.
If it doesn't pass, I only have 40,000 in my budget.
So we'll have to word the warrant article that by passage of this, the operating budget will decrease by X amount. You follow?
Right.
So we'll gross appropriate in the operating budget, then the warrant article would state that if this passes, the operating budget will be reduced by, X thousand
So
dollars.
this 84 would drop by 40 or 50, whatever you decide.
Correct,
to seed it.
correct.
Okay.
He does need
And-
some for the first,
3 months.
3 months
4
anyway.
months, yeah.
yeah, follow up.
And that money stays in that account, it doesn't become part of the general fund money, it doesn't become
No.
part of your of a bottom line budget that we keep talking about?
No.
It stays dedicated
Separate
to that
fund.
fund?
Correct, and the only way to pull from that is through the permission from the Board of Selectmen. It's not that I can go into that fund and go, can't do that.
Yeah.
You have to get permission from my Board of Selectmen
Now,
to spend that.
she's not here, but she'll tell you, Janice, that this is another fund to manage. We have some limitations with our accounting software, which, we took that out of CIP. Our financial software is really outdated, so it will be a bit of a challenge. I don't know whether, I think the board is gonna support this, so we'll probably listen to Janice, but I think that will be something that she'll have to address, but it's another fund that gets audited, another fund that has to be quote-unquote managed, and it's another checkbook to balance, I'll put it to you that way. So it has its positives, a lot of positives, but there is one part where it's one more checkbook to balance at the end of the day.
Further questions on that before I segue over to Bill? Bill?
Okay, Chief, I think you did a really great job of bringing in the budget at 1.12% over
Yep.
last year's. I really think that's great. I know you had to work hard to get there. The $47,663 to bring it to total flat, what would that take out of your budget?
If I can
Yeah, we're almost
answer
there.
before you get there, he's actually
Yeah.
$3,000 less because there's an estimated revenue of 50,000 that wasn't ever there before. But, hang on, which is in the school now, okay? And the school is gonna get reimbursed approximately 15,000 of that from the other two towns. So the net effect, let's work it through, okay, is 35 minus 32,000.
Okay. He has rephrased the question.
So Bill is saying if you had 32,000, you had to find some place to make it totally flat with all the calculations, where would you suggest would be the least, or where would you suggest it could come from? Did I state that for you all right? Okay.
You have a vacant position in police communications that's in the budget.
Bill?
I have, my
No.
police communications is filled.
There was a vacant position
was a
up until like
vacant.
2-3 months ago.
Right.
The salary sheets we were given 2 weeks ago show a vacant position.
Not correct then.
That's incorrect.
I know that,
Okay.
I know we
We're
signed
up-
up on
we're
something a
up to
couple of months
stuff.
ago.
Okay.
On that one, what about police operations, chief? Do you have a
He's still-
vacant patrolman too?
No, that's not funded.
That's unfunded, we took that one out.
And he's still looking for his sheets.
$32,000.
Or if we hit 30,000, because I noticed in police communication, there's 3,800 there. It's somewhere around 30 to 32, I think, if we bat the number around for zero net tax effect.
Well, no.
The resource officer.
That's, yeah, on the town side,
No, not the town. I'm looking at it as a tax effect, because the town side is been reduced by 50,000.
I understand that, but the person paying the bill is the Goffstown School District.
Correct.
They will pay the bill, the $50,000 bill,
Then they're gonna go get 15,000 from the other two towns.
for their budget.
Yeah.
Not for the town budget.
Correct. Right.
So the net for the combined budgets
Right.
is, I would agree with you,
That-
but
that's
for
what I'm
this
saying.
particular budget, so when someone said,
Right.
where are you gonna find the extra,
32,000.
yeah,
That's the combined school-town difference.
I know that, but we're not talking about
Yeah,
school
I
and
am.
town.
Yeah,
You
I am.
are, but,
Yeah.
okay. When we did it, we drafted it as
Sure.
the town.
Right, but if you wanna look at it, that's nice between the town and the school, but if you don't account for it, you're still going out to the people okay, who paying the tax, said, I still want 32,000 more than the previous year. And that's the way I'm looking at it, from our perspective, for the question. Hang on, he's still working on it.
I would have to get back to you on that.
Okay, is that all right, Bill? Okay, and then after Bill, it was Ivan. Are you done, Bill, or do you have another?
Also, thank you, Chief.
Ivan, you're up.
Just in terms of a little more clarification, the police budget's about 92% personnel lines.
91.56.
Been working on that one all night.
That's good.
Thank you for slipping that in, Ivan.
That's good. But you've,
But who's counting?
the regular wages rounded off, rounded down, are about 2.1 million. But there's a big jump in your request for retirement showed about a 10% increase, about 30,000, and police 43,111. Oh, the benefits line, you asked for from 4.8 up to 5.8 100,000 roughly, about a 20% increase.
I'm looking, are you looking at 43,110?
Yeah.
That's about 50,000
From 478
to 528.
to 5,
That's a two.
on the original police request, went up to,
580, yeah, but that's not
585.
really what we're, okay, if you make it.
that was 20%.
Yeah, well, we need to make that clear, that's not the numbers that we're looking at, because that's not what the selectmen
Okay.
presented to us.
I was just wondering what
The
that was about.
retirement is out of my control.
Mhm.
So are the benefits. The retirement is set, there's a downshifting from the state.
Understood.
And that's where this has come. I believe it was 5% last year and 5% again this year, being downshifted. So the retirement is being downshifted to the burden of the town.
What about the benefits, the benefits line?
I don't set the benefit line.
That's the
That's
health
more-
insurance cost, again, a cafeteria plan, which means what they do is, they know we don't, HIPAA rules don't allow us to necessarily know individual
No, I understand that.
requests for family plans or two-person or single plans or something, but that's the calculation that fully funds what the possibilities are.
So there's a 10% increase there roughly.
I think it was 7.
It's, yeah.
7 point something?
The actual plans went up 7%. But what that doesn't factor in is that you may have an officer that we hired, one left, we hired another one, they were single, then another one is family, so it goes up in that respect. So it could possibly be higher than 7, it could be lower. If you hire someone who someone leaves and they had a family on the family plan, they come in at a single, it's gonna be lower. And then we did have some turnover this past year.
We had, actually, I believe, 4 officers
Right.
leave in the past year.
So that would account many times if you bring in an officer and they have a family, and the previous officer who left
Right.
that position didn't, that could be $8,000 potentially.
Per,
Could,
roughly per.
yeah.
So,
per-
and the
per
and the
person.
buyout component is in there too.
Yeah, it is, yeah, but that's not really the case in his department.
I'm just trying to
There aren't,
understand.
I don't think that there are many that do that in the chief's department.
We have very limited quote-unquote buyout, as far as how many days you can accumulate, et cetera. It is not,
For those who don't wanna ask the question, explain the buyout.
If, years ago, the Board of Selectmen was looking at a way to control costs. And what they did was they tried to incentivize people by not taking insurance, maybe taking insurance from a spouse, by offering a cash incentive or a buyout of a certain amount of money. And I believe don't quote me, I think it's around, no. I think currently, I think it's at 6. Maybe back then it was 3, but
now it's
when
up.
you have plans that are on
12,000,
average
13,000.
$12, $15, $16,000, and if you can offer someone $5,000 or $6,000 to go on their spouse's plan, well, there's a net savings there of $10,000. So that was the mindset of some prior boards, and that's kind of what has been the past practice.
Christie first.
I just was curious about the Era Cops grant. It was at $12,000 for this year. What was that?
it's like it never even happened. We never got the grant.
Oh, you never,
Never got the grant.
Okay.
We didn't reapply for it. That money's there,
Right.
and it stays there. It wasn't
Depends
expended, it's
upon
not planning
person.
on being expended. It was attached to
Varies all over the
receiving
state.
that grant.
can I do a follow-up?
We've already
Are,
taken it.
are you applying for any grants this year that would help with the revenue?
No.
No.
I mean, minor grants, there may be some,
It was a big one, Chief.
well,
that- the
I'm sorry,
communication
well,
one,
I was
think
gonna
it's
get
one.
into that, but there's
Yeah.
the communication grant for the radio upgrades, which I believe is gonna go onto the governor's desk next month, early next month. So yes, there's that grant for the radio, but is there any police officer grants or something like that for personnel? No.
Or vest, or,
Well, again, we get the reimbursement, they call it a grant, I guess they call it, but it's a 50% reimbursement.
We do, I mean, we occasionally get, I mean, this one with the communications, that's a big grant. 186,000,
I believe,
it's up there. And that's the phase 2. So remember, if you remember last year, the fire
Right.
chief was in, and thanks to the fire chief's work and the police chief's work, the second phase is gonna land on the governor's desk for approval. So that's a big, that will solve, hopefully, our communication glitches all throughout the community. We occasionally get like Department of Justice grants for little things here and there.
Homeland Security?
Homeland Security, yeah, every once in a while we'll get something.
again,
but-
we received a generator from emergency management.
Right.
So there are grants out there, they come along, if they will benefit us, yes, we'll apply for them.
There was, I mean, and just to be, to be clear, the chief did come and requested what was called a COPS grant. That was last year, and the board decided not to pursue that. And that was very similar to what the SAFER grant was on the fire department side, where they would pay for the first, percentage, or I think in the COPS one, it's the first, they pay for the first
First
two.
3 years, and
First
then
three.
you roll in the last year.
And you,
Right.
yeah. But we decided not to go in that direction.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just got one last comment, Chief. I'm looking at these numbers. Your budget, after working out with the selectmen, I'm looking at what the current police budget is. I think you did, I gotta reiterate what Bill said, you did a hell of a job. This is only 47,000 higher than the current adopted budget. And if I understand the SRO situation correctly, that's gonna wash. You effectively brought us a level-funded
Level budget.
police budget. I think that's
Thank you.
incredibly commendable for having done that.
Thank you.
I wanna thank you for doing it. I have no more questions.
And just so the committee knows, we just saw that 47, we couldn't be presumptuous and include that. We didn't know what the school board was gonna do. We requested it.
Right.
Further questions from the board? Further comments from the chief?
I'm all set, thank you.
Let's go once, go twice, you sure? You looked at all the pages, you looked at CIP, no sidewalk plow in his CIP that I know of. but- All right, here's what we're gonna do. Thank you very much.
All set, thank you.
I'm gonna ask Andrew to put us on a,
Hold,
yeah, what do you call it when you do that?
take a recess.
We're gonna take a 5-minute recess. Welcome back from our recess, and we'll welcome Chief O'Brien to the table.
Thank you.
And while we're doing that, we are also, Bill Bates, who is away, is looking to participate in the discussion where he is through electronic means. And if we're successful, if Christie's successful getting him on the phone, we'll do
Hey,
the
Bill.
same kind of testing that we normally do.
Can you hear me? Is this Verizon?
Yes.
Okay. I just don't wanna be charged.
Yeah, you can put
Yeah,
the
this is great,
microphone
but
right
you have
by
to
him.
put it someplace, because I'm gonna do some testing now.
Okay, ready, Bill?
Is your volume up all the way?
Yep.
Okay, at this point, I'm gonna say, hey, Bill, can you hear me?
Bill, can you hear Dan? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Try again, Dan. See, I get a fancy phone, it doesn't work.
It's possible the old ones work better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say that,
Uh,
'cause I have a hard time hearing.
Mr. Bates, can you hear me?
Yes.
There's a short pause. Okay, $52,489. What was the number I just said, Bill?
52,489.
Cool. Chief, would you begin to speak? And Bill, if you cannot hear the chief, would you let me know?
Bill, this is Chief, can you hear me? Bill, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go ahead, and at least Bill will be able to hear what's going on and go from there, and when we come up with questions, if he's there, I will acknowledge him. Thank you.
Okay.
As we did with Chief Sullivan, if you can give us an idea of where you would have suggested to try to obtain a 10% reduction in the appropriation for 2011 from 2010?
Sure, it's something that I went through the same drill with the Board of Selectmen, realizing that cutting 10% from my budget at this point, to me, is not realistic. I would never suggest that it would be something that the fire department should even look at. But for the sake of looking at what a 10% cut would look like, I put a menu together for the Board of Selectmen, and we had a discussion, and I'll go over that tonight with you. I've adjusted a little bit because when going through my budget with the Board of Selectmen and the cuts that were made at that point, I've adjusted a couple of the items on my list, on my menu, to look at that 10%. Now, when you look at a 10% reduction in the fire department budget, the figure comes out to $237,681. And that's one number to look at, and just a caveat to that, and we'll talk about it in a minute, is if you consider laying off any full-time personnel, that number then gets changed to $467,681, and that addition of $200,000. You say, why? Okay, we currently have two Safer Grant firefighters that are on our rolls. We received the Safer Grant and hired two firefighters back in 2008, and it's a 5-year performance period on that grant. And the stipulations of that grant is, for any reason that you do not maintain your staffing level at all from when you receive that grant, you have to pay back that grant in full plus interest. And by the end of this year, I estimated that it'd be about $200,000. And on top of that, you'd have to also figure in the loss of anticipated revenue from the Safer Grant for fiscal years 2011, 2012. Now, with that said, I'll start talking about a few of the items. First of all, one of the items was reduce overtime by $60,000. What this does is we eliminate hiring any time of backfill. So if somebody were to call in sick, vacation, take personal time. So what that happens then is you run the high risk of actually not be able to respond with a truck, where we close stations. When the staffing goes down to, say, 4 or 5 during the day, where it's typically 6, we don't want to have one or two guys running on a fire truck alone. So we may go down and we consolidate the groups at one station, so a station would be closed. With that, we have increased response times. If we're responding from a single station, we eliminate our ability to respond mutual aid if it's called upon, and they call it, and you have to use mutual aid quite a bit if we do not have enough personnel staffing from our full-time perspective. And if we rely on full-time, if we rely on mutual aid on a regular basis, we lose the EMS revenue that we do anticipate from our ambulance transports. And then, again, that goes into our special revenue account. When we were talking with the Board of Selectmen, we also talked about the potential impact of our town's ISO rating, our insurance services organization rating, which rates the town of Goffstown. And they're now looking at towns, and in fact, there was an article recently where the insurance agencies are telling the local insurance providers to keep an ear out for changes in their fire service protection. And they may have to adjust their insurance rates accordingly. So, again, we don't know what the impact would be, but if, for example, if on a regular basis, we're going down to, say, one station, we're closing stations on a daily basis or every other day, that's something where you may see an impact on your insurance rates. Another item on the list would be eliminate call firefighter pay for $135,000. Again, these are approximate. And these lines would be affected in wage lines, FICA, Medicare. This is where we would change the status of all of our call firefighters to a volunteer status, where they wouldn't be paid a dime. Right now, they get paid a stipend by hour for call and for training. It ranges depending on what their levels of certifications are and the time they've had on our staff. It ranges from $8 an hour to some of our officers that have been here for a while, say $23, $24 an hour. We may have difficulty maintaining staff, our call firefighter staff, if we do this. We'll probably reduce our membership, increase response times again. Folks may not come out at 3 a.m. for that chimney fire when it's 20 below. If they're just volunteering, if they're just have to get up in the morning for their job. Again, relying on our mutual aid partners to handle calls with us. And another thing that's staring at us is what effect does our insurance rates have if we can't get out on responses. Another thing that we threw out to the Board of Selectmen was eliminate and close and sell Station 17. We have an assessed value of that property of approximately $300,000. Again, this is a drastic move. Whenever we could try to spare jobs on the line to maintain services, we look at some absurd things, and this would be an absurd item to look at, but it's out there. We'd increase our response time to the east part of town because we lose that station. We lose a very important resource whenever we have disasters or large-scale emergencies, whether it be a ice storm or flood, or even just to say a large winter storm. We staff that station because it takes us so long to get out there, and it's that station is critical for us to maintain level of service in that part of town. In that particular case, I know for certain that there'll be a likely negative effect on your ISO rating in that area of town because they are so far away from the village or from Station 19. Another item that we threw out there was eliminate fire hydrant rental payments that we currently pay in our budget, $171,656. Again, we have 3 water precincts that we deal with that provide fire hydrants for us, and we pay anywhere from $400 per hydrant per rental to upwards to $550 per hydrant from another precinct. Again, I'm not knowing what would happen if we would maintain hydrants in town because of that, or they would be eliminated altogether from our water partners. We wouldn't know what impact that would have for our insurance rates also. Another idea that we were throwing around was cap fire hydrant rentals to say $350 per hydrant. That effect would possibly, we figured it was like almost $45,000 right there, just if we capped it at $350 per hydrant. Eliminate the building supervisor position. Again, it's a shared position with other departments, including the police department and town hall, and that equates to $13,850. Again, the lines that are affected are wage lines, FICA, retirement, and so on, Medicare. And at that point in time, we still don't have the 10%. We have to look at staff or layoff reductions. And in our particular case, you have a union, and we have a contract that we abide to. And according to the contract, the lowest in the seniority rank go first. Your lowest paid firefighters go first. So with that said, in the fact that once we lay off one person, it then translates into defaulting on that SAFER grant, another $200,000 gets added onto it, and depending on when you lay them off in the year, depends on how many firefighters you would have to lay off to meet that 10% number. With that also said, that all but 2 of our firefighters, they actually reside here in town. So if you're laying off firefighters, you're laying off Goffstown residents, and you're affecting Goffstown families. So give an example, one firefighter equates to what I did is I looked at the current numbers and the current personnel that we have, and I started from the bottom and started going up from there, giving numbers including wage, benefits, and retirement. One firefighter is $75,000, give or take. 2 firefighters is $150,000. 3 firefighters is $225,000. 4 firefighters is $307,500. 5 firefighters is $388,572. And then if you have to go that far, 6 firefighters is $473,059. Again, this brings us to an extremely unsafe staffing level. It brings us down to 3 firefighters. If you lay off 6, you're now to 3 firefighters on per shift per day, where we're normally at 6. Our call levels and our call demand well exceed what we have on duty right now. We have anywhere from 35 to 40% of the time during the day, we have simultaneous calls occurred today also, requiring off-duty folks to come in to help staff our stations. Again, if we can't respond, we're going to have increased response times, calling for mutual aid. Depending on where it is in town, it could take anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes to get mutual aid to our locations. And again, likely to impact our insurance rates. Any questions?
Here we go. I'm gonna start with Christie, she had her hand up early.
So the fire hydrant maintenance that you said was $171,560. Could DPW go in there and maintain those? No?
The hydrants are maintained by the water precincts that they're managed by. You have the village, you have the Grassmere, and then you have the Manchester water districts. They maintain their water system. And so, maintaining is not just,
Not
you know,
snow
cleaning them or
removal
snow
and-
removal, it's testing them, it's flow testing, it's making sure that they're working correctly. The winter's brutal to them. You could probably say more on that, is whenever it seems like we need to use them in the winter, we break something on them. And we're always calling the water precincts and saying, we've got another broken hydrant. Or if somebody slides into them, they snap them off. It happens regular enough where you have to maintain them. The cost is there, but again, do you shift that onto the fire department, or do you shift that onto the users? That's the question.
It just seems like with DPW, all their snow removal equipment, that could at least eliminate some of the maintenance.
Well, they're owned by the water precinct, not the town. And that's why we're actually paying the water precinct. So, there's some invoices that are done by Goffstown Water Precinct and the Grassmere Water Precinct and the Manchester Water Works directly. You get invoices directly from there. So, it's
not really maintenance, is it? That's the rental, right?
Yeah,
It's
pretty
rental.
much, it's rental, more,
Yeah.
actually, it says fire operations, fire hydrants, 171,656. So it's the cost for those particular hydrants. Earlier discussions we had in previous meetings, where I said, you know, the biggest bang for the benefit is for the users of the system.
Right.
Because there are some in town who, I was told, do get a benefit from it in case it happens. And I would say not to the greater extent, maybe a piece of that. So how does that work? I mean, should there be a smaller piece where everybody pays the same amount and a bigger piece for, you know, direct usage when your ISO rating is a 5 instead of a 9?
So you keep referring to the ISO rating, someone like me who lives in the rural part of Tibbetts, I'm not probably getting the same ISO rating as someone who lives next,
Right.
closer to a fire station.
In Goffstown, we have what they call a split rating. We have a rating of 5 and a rating of 9. And the worst rating you can have is 10. The best as you can have is 1. And so the folks that live close to a fire station and within fire hydrant, reach of a fire hydrant, that's where your rating is a 5. And the far reaches of, say, East Goffstown, where you're beyond fire hydrants and so on, your rating is a 9, and your homeowner's insurances are probably reflective of it.
Just seems like there's a way we could reduce that number.
Well, another thing too is we have cisterns dotted throughout town in
Right.
your area also. You'll see those
Right.
big pipes that come out of the ground.
Yeah.
We'll be working with ISO to see if we can get credit for those cisterns, where in the past we haven't. So that may benefit some of the homeowners
So
in the
you
area.
gotta maintain those too.
Oh, yeah.
We maintain those too.
Every year they test them, and then they have to
Yep.
go and then they have to shovel them out.
We clean them out. With DPW does help us with clearing out those. We'll if DPW is backlogged, we'll assist them with that. But we do the annual testing for that. We've got equipment to do that, and we were fortunate this past year that the prisoners for Hillsborough County came and gave them a nice coat of paint.
Thank you.
Okay, Guy and then John.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief. Thanks for coming in, by the way. And my question was on you have 2 lines here on the call firefighter wages. You've got one here that's listed duty, and the other one is incident something that's truncated here.
It's incidents and training.
Incidents and training. I seem to recall that last year, when we were discussing call firefighters, you mentioned that if we have a 4-alarm fire, say in Goffstown, you put out a call to all the guys. But that you always put out a call to all the guys, regardless of what the incident might be. I think that fender bender was the term you had used last year, because you were never sure who would actually come in. Is that
based on the time of day at all?
that's one of the many questions on what we're doing here, how we're handling, because I know that if they come in and they're not used, they're paid a minimum of, is it 4 hours?
No. If we currently, for example, if you look at the call firefighter force that we have after hours, we get called for a motor vehicle accident just out here on Main Street. The ambulance respond with the on-duty crew, and Station 18 would be dispatched to respond with an engine for extrication or flammable liquid spill or whatever that's
Okay.
there. And you put out a tone for Station 18 personnel. So now you're taking a force of, say, 45 call personnel, and now you're seeking out maybe 10. And not all 10 will show up typically, but maybe 5 would show up, and that's what we'd like to see.
What happens in practice, though?
In practice,
Do you put out a call to all 45?
no, I don't.
You put out a call to 10?
Depending on which district it's in. For example, if there's a car accident on Tibbetts Hill Road, we'll request that the call firefighters that are out in Station 17's district respond with the truck from that district. And that way you're only getting 3 or 4, not the whole 45.
Okay, what about, you said, like, one of them, you had 10 that are assigned to a particular, typically 4 or 5 will show up.
Yes,
Do you ever get all 10?
very rarely.
And if it happens, what do you do with the 10?
We would just say you can clear and return. And we pay them by the hour, the first hour, and beyond that, we pay by whatever they're tied up. If the full-time, I think you're confusing a little, the full-time employees, they have it in the contract, that if they're called back for a, say, building fire, their minimum callback is 3 hours, similar to like the police or DPW.
Okay. And what's the duty between incident and training and the other line for duty?
Right, the incidents and training line is for just that, for responding to, say, that car accident, to that fire, and for paying them to come back for training sessions.
Okay.
And the duty line is when we use call firefighters to cover vacant shifts that are typically, there for full-time firefighters.
Is it like for when they're on vacation or?
When they're on vacation, they call in sick, or they take a personal day. It's a cost-effective way for us to, maintain services, but perhaps utilize our call force instead of that paying time and a half.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
John?
Thank you, Chief. It doesn't sound, that it would be very popular to go from call to volunteer. I can't imagine anyone's going to, and it would probably, I can't imagine any call firefighters are gonna actually sign up to volunteer.
Right.
And just as it would be just as unlikely that any full-time firefighters would move over to call.
Right.
And have no full-time firefighters, which would save us a lot of money. But that would probably be just as unpopular. Right. But I did notice that, for instance, a few weeks ago, I went through a CERT training. And we were very pleased to have Lieutenant LeMay or Mark LeMay.
Yep.
I don't know what his title is, but, and 2 others came with him. And then we went to the fire station and we had a sample fire and how to put it out with a fire extinguisher. And there were several firefighters there that day. And I guess my question is how many normally do we staff on a Saturday afternoon? And was the group of firefighters there that day, were those full-time firefighters, or were those call firefighters that were being compensated for being at the station that day? Because I believe there was more than a half a dozen of them and there wasn't any fires going on.
Right. Well, I'm not sure when you showed up there. Typically on a day-to-day basis, from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., we have
7 days a week?
7 days a week.
Okay.
We have 6 full-time firefighters on duty. And they're usually split up between Station 18 here in the village and Station 19 in Bernardville. Throughout the day, we have call firefighters that come in and they'll stand by for an hour or so, or get things done, or train with the on-duty crew, and then they'll leave. So there's a number of personnel that come and go throughout the day.
Being compensated or
No,
coming in for
just coming in just to be familiar with the department and what's going on.
Yep.
So you probably saw the mix of the on-duty crew and probably some call firefighters that were in and out during the day. You could have found that there was some call firefighters actually working on duty also. Again, looking at that call wages duty line, that's where they would be compensated from. But they're on duty and ready to go if there was a call that came in.
But they're not being, so they're there waiting for something, but they're not being compensated until they're actually called.
Correct, until there's an incident.
Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you.
Except for if they happen to be there for training, but probably not on the Saturday.
Yeah, if it's training class, we'll have training on Saturday sometimes, but it's usually a specialized program, say for like auto extrication. We'll take the crews to like Hebert's auto and cut up some cars. That way we take a full day class.
Yeah, they take it serious. I mean, they're great guys. I mean, they take it serious. They're great.
You do want them to take it seriously.
Well, I mean, they're really, no, they do. I mean, it's real pleased to have them around, that's for sure.
Come back over to Guy.
Okay, Chief, I got kind of a hypothetical for you. In the EMS line, you've got an ambulance purchased there at 190, and I understand that's self-funding, I guess.
Correct.
Okay. And in CIP, of course, we've got a new tanker pumper at 550. If you had a choice of one or the other this year, and I say that because I know you've mentioned about the suspension on the ambulance, I've heard you speak about that. I know the condition, engine 5's out of service, and it's the opportunity to replace two vehicles really with one.
Right.
Okay. If you have a choice of one this year and one next year, which would be the most important to you?
Well, it's tough to answer that question where, again, one's funded solely from a separate fund versus
I
taxation.
understand, but I've got almost like I guess not a proposition, but I got an idea. Anyways, I still like an answer to the question first, then I'll blow this past you, see what you think.
Okay. I guess with general logic in mind, you would need to replace the truck that's out of service now.
Okay.
And that's, so the priority is there, and given that scenario, you would wanna get the fire apparatus
I would
and get another
agree.
year out of an ambulance.
Of the ambulance.
And I gotta
Okay.
tell you, I'm dying to hear what you're coming up with,
Okay.
because I know what a self-fund can and can't do.
Right, okay. We've got, what, 143 to help offset the cost of the fire truck,
Approximately.
roughly?
Yeah.
Can we round it off to 140 just to make sure? Okay. So we're looking at a $550,000 tanker pumper that we would be picking up for $410
Correct.
net effect to the taxpayers. And then over in EMS, we've got 190 sitting there for the ambulance, okay? And that money has to be used that way, or can be used to offset EMS-related expenses on the fire department's side. And since we do send fire trucks out with a majority of our ambulance calls, we could certainly come up with a way to show 190,000 in expenses on the fire department side. That would mean, if that money goes towards the fire truck, the taxpayers are only gonna get hit with $220 this year. And then next year, we could put the ambulance in a warrant article and pick up the ambulance. Then, basically what it does, takes that $500,000, that 410,000 net cost for the fire truck, splits it over 2 years. And over 2 years, you still get both vehicles, but you're not hitting the taxpayers as hard.
Before you go there,
That was
or
the-
in addition to that, you're indicating that since there won't be a balance left in the EMS fund to
Pay.
outrightly purchase an ambulance,
Mhm.
those funds would necessarily have to be raised by taxes and lent to the EMS fund, because the EMS fund would have to pay back that cost.
So we couldn't do it that way.
Well, it would be very intriguing, because you would have to account to the books to justify the $190 extra $1,000, or in fact, the whole 300 and whatever thousand, 310.
I'm just looking for a way to get
No,
the
that's-
cheapest truck without slamming and spread it over a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know how that would be done technically, it just,
that would be an interesting bookkeeping function. Actually, not bookkeeping, but we'd have to look at the fund accounting of it because you can't just, I see the logic where we usually send a fire truck to an incident that's EMS related.
I don't know how the fund is written.
I'd have to check the
wording.
the
of it.
wording of the
Yeah.
the article.
To find out, if that's the case, then our fees need to be increased to take care of that particular portion of it, but you would have to look to see why the truck is going to the EMS, and if it's because of, the different gas spills or something like that, but let me leave it at interesting for now.
I mean, the fire trucks don't go to every call. Again,
No,
we
they
talked
don't.
about triaging
Yeah.
the calls. I mean, but they may
Extra
show up
hands.
to assist with care.
Sure.
you had mentioned it was more than 50% of the time, last time we discussed it.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be just that fire truck. It could be a fire truck out of the east part of town or Penardville also. So it's not.
It's not specific, but it could be an expense reimbursement to the town, which is now in here at 48,000.
Correct.
For use of other items.
Such as
Yeah.
wear and tear on a vehicle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much, if you look at where 48,000 is coming from at that point.
Mhm.
I've got Mr. Burt, and did you raise your hand again, John?
Mhm.
Okay.
That's when I
Mr.
did
Burt,
that,
then
and you
John,
said-
and
Thanks,
then
Chief.
Paul. Okay, go ahead.
All right, thanks for coming, Chief.
Sure. John, Paul.
I disagree with the unpopularity of going to a volunteer fire department. And the only reason I'm throwing that out is because more than half of the nation runs on volunteer fire department, a lot. Way more than half. I can't believe that some of our volunteers only do it for the money. I think they do it because they love it.
Absolutely.
Now, with the volunteers, I was looking at the $8 to $23 an hour. How does that, how do you determine who gets the 8 and who gets the 23?
It's a combination of both the level of training, the certifications, and their longevity on the department. And also, this year, we implemented a program where their pay is directly affected by how we measure how many calls they go on, how active they are, and their performance. They get a performance evaluation. So there's a combination of all those factors in there that puts them on a pay scale, and they're maintained from there. They cannot get a increase of pay unless they show me another certification that's in that pay scale, and they have to maintain that they're active and they've got a great performance evaluation from their officer. Those combinations will get them a bump in pay.
And how many in the 40 volunteers that we currently have, if that's the number, are making the 23? That just sounds pretty high to me. But
You're only talking a handful.
all right.
Like, for example, Lieutenant LeMay, he's been in the department probably almost 20 years now or more, and so he's got the longevity to show it.
Well, once again, to get back to the volunteer, like I said, more than half the nation runs on volunteer, but
Right.
also, we are all volunteers. CERT is 100%, if I'm understanding correctly, and they do a great job really preparing themselves for anything that goes wrong.
Right.
100%.
you-
Libraries should be going to a
Keep in
volunteer
mind,
basis.
when you look at the statistics like that, in the fire service, I can tell you that when they term the term volunteer, they would also consider our call firefighters and call EMTs as volunteer, because they're not getting paid full-time. They get a stipend for doing a call or for doing training, whatever their call rate would be, whether it be $8 an hour or $24 an hour. They're in the sense of the fire service, they're deemed as volunteers. So yes, we have volunteers here, but when I talked about earlier, going volunteer status, it means no compensation whatsoever. Even to, say, New Boston, they say they're volunteers, but again, they give a 1-year stipend for, folks that did a lot of calls. So you get like call credits or whatever you want to call it, and then they get a 1-year stipend right around Christmas to help them with Christmas shopping or something like that.
Yeah.
Again, you're right. Without a doubt, almost, I would say all of my folks on the call force, they don't do it for the pay. What drives them is to help people in town.
Yeah, because in the early 80s, I used to be a volunteer fire department, got no money.
All right.
Chief Stone, that was our chief, he got no pay. And, the town paid for the fire building and the trucks, that's
Sure.
it. And it worked very well. Now, to the fire hydrants, what would happen if we just gave them up? What would it do to let's say because like Christie isn't benefiting. I live down in Litchfield Park, they just put some fire hydrants down there. Allegedly, I gotta call my insurance company and my insurance will go down. Why wouldn't the homeowners that circle that pay in their water rates?
I'm not clear on how each water precinct or department manages their rates, and that's something that we probably have to ask them. And what would happen if we translated that cost back onto them, and whether there'd be a rate increase for the users or how that would work out.
Well, I would assume there'd be a small increase, but
Well,
that's
hang
why I
on.
was wondering, what would the increase be?
Well, hang on there, Mr. Burt, because on this committee are 2 representatives, one from the Goffstown Water Village Precinct and one from the Grassmere. And Mr. Gordon is actually here from the Grassmere. And so you could probably answer that question, could you not?
Yes, I can.
Give it a shot, please.
I can fill you in. Our precinct, rate to the fire department is, I believe, 407. We didn't go up this year. And we have calculated it out that is basically a wash, but we don't charge for the water that goes through the hydrant. It's not metered. So that water going at some ferocious number of gallons per minute out of a hydrant is not metered, not charged, is not charged to anybody. Basically about 10%, if we have, our meter sits up on North Road, coming up from Manchester, and about 90% of the water that goes through that meter is billed to our users, residents and commercial users. The remaining 10%, which is within a statistical happiness spot, or whatever you want to call it, is leakage, fire hydrants, flushing fire hydrants. You know, fire hydrants for fires and flushing fire hydrants. So about 10% of our volume goes into that type of stuff. It would be ferociously expensive to meter each one of those hydrants, because that's a very high volume meter. The life expectancy of a hydrant was around 60 years, and it cost well over $3,000 to put one in. So there's half the cost of the $400 right there. The other thing is annual testing, painting, replacing various parts. As you mentioned, things fall off in the wintertime, things fall off in the summertime too. So the $407 comes in real close. I really will say that I really liked your idea of a $350 cap or something. I think the town and the school should be very proactive in going after their providers for, squabbling over every dime. That's an editorial. So have I hit the question fairly well?
Yes, and I guess the question I have is how many hydrants does Grassmere invoice the town for? Do you know?
I cannot recall.
Could you find that out for us?
I think it's like 45,
47,
46,
45,
yeah, around 46, 45, somewhere around there.
And the 10% leakage in clearance, does that amount to the 45 or 46 times $407, or that has to be paid by someone because Manchester
No.
Waterworks is paying,
It's
is
paid
charging?
by,
It's gotta be paid by the
it's
users.
paid by the users.
I have so many users
Exactly.
divided into that 10%, and that gets added to the rate.
In other
as
words,
an
our
amalgamated number.
users who are using 90% of our
Yep.
water is paying for 100% of what comes up Mass Road.
Except for the amount billed to the town for hydrants.
No.
You're calling that a
Do
user
not
fee?
bill for the water that passes through the hydrants.
So where does the $407 come from? It's not for current fees, it must be for something else.
$407 broken down, it's about $200 amortizing the cost of the installed hydrant over its 60-year life.
Yep.
We have an annual flushing of each one of the hydrants, which is
So is that personnel cost for the
That's
flushing?
personnel cost.
Okay.
That runs about $75. And then we have to take the parts and the labor that we put into the repair and the maintenance of those hydrants, those 47 hydrants. If somebody does a hit and run, it costs us close to $3,000. I think it's around $1,600, $1,700, $1,800 if somebody cleans it off right at ground level.
No insurance?
Not if it's hit and run, nobody knows
If
who
it's a
did
hit
it.
and run, we don't know who did it.
We don't know who did it. They ran.
We eat it.
No, haven't done that yet.
So that whole the $207 isn't, in fact, I'm pushing on Bruce Rand to really give me some better numbers in there, but I don't think $207 to keep that thing.
2 or 4?
The $200 amortizing the cost of the unit.
Oh,
It's in the ground with a 60-year life, because we're gonna have to start replacing units pretty soon, because we've got some that are pushing 60. And that's about the life expectancy of a unit.
You said it's about 3,000 to install it.
Yes, and I think they haven't counted the labor of digging the hole if they have to dig a hole.
Because when I do the math, 60 times 50 is $3,000, not 200, so that would be like, 60 times 50 is $3,000. 60 years times $50 a year would be $3,000. And so the 200 is, so it's just my math. We'll probably talk more about it after, and I've got a number of people, and I got you on
Bruce
this.
Rand is going to bring,
just a couple more.
is going to
Okay.
bring real closer numbers in
Okay.
for me. But ours is the lowest of the three by a good shot.
And Chief, with those 2 employees that we have on that grant, that I'm not a big fan of grants that have these types of stipulations on them, because, then we're stuck. But when does it end?
It'd be June 30th of 2013.
13?
Yeah, 2013.
Okay.
Is that the last of the requirement to hold on to them?
Correct.
On the SCBA equipment,
Which line are you on, first page?
yeah, first page.
Yeah.
47900. What is that?
That has a few things that are tied into it. It's maintaining the department's SCBA units. Is also tied into maintaining our air filling stations that we have to fill those units. We have to have annual fit testing for those units, flow tests for all those units, any repairs that come up on them, any masks, the masks that the firefighters wear, if they fail or they need replacement, that's where this would come out of. Recently, we've had some repairs done to our filling station, and we anticipate another couple bills coming in for the fit testing.
And then on 44100 on the first page also, we're looking at approximately $5,880 in professional dues. What kind of dues are those?
We belong to 2 mutual aid associations. One is Border Area, the other one is Sauhegan Mutual Aid Fire Association. And this also pays for our hazmat team dues. We belong to what's called the SMART team, which is actually based out of Nashua. If we were to have a hazardous materials incident that became at the technical level where it's a very large incident, we can call this team out of Nashua. They'll come up and help us mitigate the response. So it's only for us to train everybody at the hazmat level and have all the equipment to respond to anything that comes through town would be very, very costly. And for, I believe it was $2,500 or $2,600 a year just for that hazmat dues, really makes sense for us.
All right.
Also in there, we have dues for all of our firefighters for the New Hampshire Firemen's Association. It's an enrollment fee, approximately $20 a year for each firefighter. If they're injured or God forbid they were killed in the line of duty, this would help the family members with some of the costs of, say, burial and so on. Also, some dues for the NFPA codes and subscriptions is also tied into this line too. That's approximately $1,000 a year for, just make sure we have the updated codes that we enforce.
All right. And then just two others is, I'm on, I don't know what page it is. The 42201 page.
Fire operations.
That's the first five, what's the next
Oh,
five?
okay.
61,
61355. I was just wondering what EMS service fees. I mean, that's a pretty big chunk of change there.
Oh, we're in the EMS budget now.
Yep.
Six
It's about
one.
30,250, I believe, yeah.
Service fees, that is what we pay our ambulance service billing company to actually bill for our services. We do not have the technology or the expertise to bill our ambulance calls out with using the code for Medicare and so on. So this company, we send our accounts to them, they bill it out, they manage the accounts, and they give us what we received. So we have to pay them a percentage of what is received, and that's reflected in this account right here.
Now this, well, maybe Scott can answer this $400,000 software that we're looking at, or,
It's not, it's been cut.
That's
oh,
gone.
that's gone, okay, well,
I don't,
I mean,
I don't
could
know
that
if
do it?
would-
I don't know if we'd be taking over,
I don't-
that's a full-time job.
Yeah,
plus.
it's basically, it's almost like a collection
collection
agency where
agency.
Oh, it
you're
is,
building,
okay.
you're billing
So-
insurance companies. If people don't pay, you're setting up a pay plan for them, and
Right.
it's,
It's very,
it's a lot of work.
Following up on it, sending
So
letters.
it's probably pretty reasonable then.
It's almost like hospital
Absolutely.
billing more than
Yep.
anything else.
Yeah, because if you have to have an employee, then that's more retirement.
Yep.
Well, then on the last question I have is, I know why you don't have the EMS, which is, I guess, allegedly self-sufficient, so it doesn't cost us anything. So, what was the police chief trying for details?
Revolving fund.
Yeah, why don't we just have this in a revolving fund, so that way it's not in the tax?
it is, it's a similar to a revolving fund, it's a special revenue fund. It's somewhat the same thing. So, for example, if, at the end of the year, we budgeted for $400,000 and we only spent $380,000, that $20,000 that's remaining, or it's unspent, is in that account. And, for example, if we bring in, say, $425,000 in revenue, patient revenue, and we only use 400, that 25 just goes in the account and it exists there for the purpose of, say, purchasing the ambulance or equipment.
Well, so why can't we just have a revolving account?
Because you
And then
can't,
that way, it won't be on the tax bill.
it's not on the tax bill.
This is not.
Because
Well, then-
you accumulate, there's offsetting revenue. Don't forget, you have to gross appropriate, and then there's revenue that offsets it completely, 100%. So when you do the taxes,
Okay.
you look at the expense, you look at the revenue, it comes down to zero. So there's no tax effect. It's completely supported by those bills that are
Okay.
sent out that these people that we pay $30,000 a year collect on our behalf. It allows you to accumulate funds in that account for future expenses to purchase additional equipment and the apparatus you're gonna need to support it, where a revolving account isn't made for that. The revolving account, you actually look at the exact expense and you only charge what that is, and then if you have too much at the end of the year, you then have to reduce your prices to make it all kind of wash, and you gotta look at it and monitor it a lot more closely. That would be the difference.
Right.
All right, well,
For example, a couple of years ago, we received a portion of an estate. It was, a person that died left money towards the ambulance service. Again, that money was put in this fund for purchase of an ambulance, or we actually purchased, helped us purchase a monitor defibrillator for $25,000. So it allows us to do that.
all right, thank you, chief.
Thanks.
I've got three lines. I've got John and Paul and back over to Guy. John?
Thanks. I have a couple questions on the fire operations benefit line, 43110.
That's health insurance.
That's health insurance, but I don't see that on the EMS line. I don't see, And I guess maybe I missed it, but I'm not seeing benefits on the EMS pages.
Because the benefit line is for full-time personnel only, where the EMS budget covers the part-time EMS and the call firefighters that work to maintain that system.
You don't have any full-time firefighters that come to the threshold of being able to offer them benefits, health
Correct.
insurance. Correct, that's not here. No full-time staff.
No full-time EMS staff that gets benefits. Okay.
Right. Well, we don't have full-time EMS staff per se. I mean, we have full-time firefighter EMTs that also function as EMTs on the ambulance. But as far as the budget goes, you'll see their benefits reflected on the fire budget where our wage line is, okay? We don't have a full-time wage line in the ambulance budget.
Okay, let's follow up on that also.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, the EMS, and I ask this every year, I think, and on the EMS, in going to a few shows in Concord, for instance, and seeing other towns that have private ambulance services. Not saying whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. However, I see that the towns that have it seem to be doing okay with it. The ambulance services that I've talked to, I've mentioned that the concern of the people in town may be that they're afraid that their level of service may not be as adequate because they may not be familiar with the people on the ambulance that come to take care of them. And they assured me that they would, well, what they said they normally do is they hire the EMS people when they come in and when a town privatizes the EMS service. So assuming that they do that, and knowing a lot more about the state retirement system than I did 2 years ago, and knowing the crunch that we're in, are there ways that we can somehow move some of this out of being a municipal responsibility and move it more into the private sector? Especially a service that isn't really, it doesn't seem to, it kind of funds itself. It kind of funds itself. It barely funds itself. It's something that if we have, it's good to have. If we didn't own it, it could quite possibly or would give us a similar service, but we wouldn't be responsible for those retirements and those benefits and all the things that.
Before you jump in, Chief, what I'm gonna ask John is if you could wrap that around an appropriation or number, because there's no tax effect to that. So I'm wondering where you're going, whether you're going down a policy issue, or if you're going down, where's the savings or that you're trying to come by, or maybe no savings? I mean, is it, sounds like a lot like policy, but that's what
I'm trying to find ways, because we don't wanna.
Could we ask the question this way? Because the only benefit I can see to the taxpayer in Goffstown is if the fees for the services, if there's been a study that the fees that are being charged to the Goffstown residents now for this service would change if it was privatized. Would that be a fair, that's the only way I can see.
Would
any
our tax rate
Wouldn't
change?
Wouldn't change, a nickel, a penny.
Our tax rate wouldn't change.
Wouldn't change a dime.
Our tax liability would change, none of it, nothing would change.
It's if anything, we might have a better rate on, no, I don't think it even affects any fire rates or anything of that nature. The only thing that would happen is if the cost to the individuals who use the service, if it's privatized, there's a profit margin in there, because you have to in order to be in business. With the municipal run, there's not a whole like a lot, it covers the cost, that's the basis of it. So the question would be if there's been any studies whether the cost is more or less, or we're charging Social Security rates or Medicare rates or something?
We charge Medicare rates, currently Medicare rates plus 20%, because we found that the folks that have private insurance, the private insurance payers will pay the added expense. So that's why we go Medicare plus 20. We also take assignment for Medicare. So for example, if you know or know somebody that's on Medicare, Medicare pays what they're gonna pay, and then we just disallow the remainder if the person can't pay. And that's our policy, versus a private provider has the ability to, under law, to seek out that extra amount that they charge over Medicare. They have the ability to do that if they want to. You gotta remember, when we look at billing patients, it's not to make money for the profit margin that you're talking about. It's a cost recovery. You know, we wanna make sure that, yes, we do it so we can maintain our services in our system for our community. Could we charge the rates that you may see from Rockingham Ambulance or AMR or Care Plus or any other private provider? Sure, we could, but I think it'd be like an undue hardship to our folks that use our service. And what's nice about our system is the fact that the money that Medicare, Medicaid, the insurance, or even private people were willing to pay for their trip to the hospital goes back to our own system. It doesn't go to a corporation that has shareholders, you know, out of state or out of country. So that's what's nice about this system. And there's efficiencies that I could go on and on about it, but if you're just talking about, you know, money and taxation, you know, we always look at how our EMS revenue fund is performing. Yes, we don't, I mean, yes, I would like to have $1 million in there ready to go at any point in time, but is it realistic? You know, so if we get that ambulance when we need it and we don't have to ask the taxpayers, it's working. Okay, and that's where we're at now. At some point in time, would we have to adjust our rates to match up with the increased cost for equipment in ambulances? Sure. But, you know, we're not there yet. Versus, again, private providers are gonna make sure that they can cover their overhead plus staff. And we could touch on staffing, and I've worked in EMS now for over 26 years, and I've worked for a volunteer system, I've worked for a private provider, and fire-based, I've worked for hospital-based systems. And without a doubt, fire-based is the most efficient way to go. The efficiencies are bound. For example, the way I look at it is we have an all-hazards approach to our efficiencies. Okay, no matter what, somebody calls 911, the fire department's gonna go. Okay, whether it's for a water problem in your basement, or your house is on fire, or you're having a heart attack, we're there. And what's neat about it is all of our guys are trained to handle whatever's coming down on that call. Whether it's a hazardous materials incident, water rescue, our guys are ready for it. So your efficiencies are there, versus if you just had a private provider that's trained at one level, your EMT or paramedic. Okay, so when you look at the cost for us doing business and the hourly rate with retirement benefits, that kind of goes in that effect of, well, you're getting a lot more bang for your buck, but you may, if you're just looking at it going, oh, they're just doing an ambulance call. Well, they're using their expertise on that particular moment for EMS. But, you know, the next call could be a brush fire. Or the next call could be a, you know, guys having, you know, water flowing into his basement. We're trying to handle that emergency too. So that's where your efficiencies are. And you're not bound to one service trying to provide that one thing, that one niche that you're looking for. And for us to try to compare fire-based EMS to a private provider or, say, a volunteer service, it's very tough. It's very tough for us to do. Because if you look, they have business models that make them efficient, because they go on, they could say, okay, we're gonna provide an ambulance to cover this area, and we know we can get there within 10 minutes. But you gotta remember, the fire department, if we're not there within 4 or 5 minutes, people get pretty upset. So, they base their model on the fact that if it's a bad call, the fire department's gonna be there anyway, and we're gonna get there first. And so we're gonna be providing care anyway, and so they could be there in 10 or 12 minutes and still be okay. Versus right now, our average response time for our ambulance in town is 5 to 6 minutes. So we're out achieving better what I believe that they could ever do in town here.
I think, Dan, I don't know, like,
Yeah,
I think
I
we
don't
are
know.
going policy here. I'm not objecting to it. and
I don't think we're running out of time, but.
Well, I'm just saying, we've just spent like 15 minutes on a
I don't think
policy
it was that long,
question.
but that's okay. I thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
You okay with that, John?
I'm okay with that.
Sure.
This just,
Yep.
I don't think it's policy, but maybe it is.
You have further budget questions?
I have a quick budget question,
Okay.
is I think that, is it possible that we're leaving money on the table by not being more aggressive at getting, more, calls out of the nursing home, out of the, either the Hillsborough County or the other nursing homes? Is there a possibility that we could be getting more calls to transport? Because I believe transport is a substantial amount of revenue.
You could bring up a good point, and that is definitely something that we could look at in the future. The way that our call volume, our call demands are handled right now, we have a need for 2 ambulances. If we put on a transfer or transport service like that or offer it to the nursing homes, I would recommend that we would look into either keeping an ambulance instead of trading it in and running it in that fashion, so we have 3 ambulances in town for that purpose. I instituted, when I was in Derry, I instituted a transport system, and it was a revenue maker. But again, it's a commitment that the town would have to dive in on. And, it's staffing, equipment, ambulance, but again, the revenue does come in. I'd like to look at that in the next year or 2.
Okay,
I just want to let John know that we've had some of these discussions with regard to privatization, and I think Nick Camposano was a deputy chief in Manchester, and he's looked into it, and he's still looking into it. A couple things I want everybody to keep in mind is that when you do sign these contracts, there's a couple things. One, they typically want all of your ambulances, so they want a turnover of all your equipment. Secondly, scale is important. So like in a city like Manchester, it might work out better because they get a lot of calls, whereas in Goffstown, there might not be that economies of scale to make it, work as much. Towns that have done it, I'm not going to say that they've been lured maybe in by a really good price. They give up their ambulances. 3, 4, 5 years down the road, the price is going up, costing the town more and more and more, and guess what? Now you don't have any ambulances, so now you want to end the contract, you want to go back to the way you did it, now you got to buy 2 ambulances at $400,000. So, and I guess the list could go on and on. We could privatize the county nursing home. There's plenty of private nursing homes around, right? I mean, there's so much. Prisons, we can.
Paul, we're up to you.
All right. Hi, I was
That was Sue, yes.
just comparing some things with the police department, and I know this is probably not apples to apples, and I hope you can explain the difference. But I was noticing that the police department has about twice the amount of the fire department in regular wages, but overtime pay is about the same. They're both right around 140. I was wondering if you could shed some light on that.
I'm not gonna even ask on how the police department backfills shifts, whether they have the ability to, if somebody calls in sick or goes on vacation, whether they have to hire right away. But in our particular case, in order to maintain the services in staffing levels, the moment somebody calls in sick or goes on vacation, it creates a vacancy that we try to fill. So that's the reason why it's called a 1-for-1 replacement. If somebody goes out, I don't know if that exists in the PD, so that may be the difference.
Could you expound to find out how did you build your overtime budget and why?
Well, it's been cut by the Board of Selectmen. I try to bill it on the number of shifts and the number of hours that I need. For example, I know roughly how many shifts need to be covered because of vacation. How many shifts usually I need to cover because of sick time or personnel time. How many training hours I need to cover. And I calculate that out using an average overtime rate. And then I come out with my figure.
Did that help, Paul?
Yeah.
Follow-up?
Hey, Christie?
Yes, Bill? You can ask a question.
Are you on a list, Bill?
Did you have your
I,
hand
I
up, Bill?
I do have some questions.
Okay, I'll get to you right after, Guy. He was on, and then,
Okay.
and then we'll go over back to, Scott. You all set? Do you have anything else, Paul?
No, I'm good.
Guy?
One question, Chief, what is percentage of your, operations budget is labor? You know, the police chief mentioned it was 91.5.
After the budget cuts from the Board of Selectmen, we're looking at 83 to 85%.
83 to
83 to
85?
85.
Thank
I'd
you.
have to double check, but I believe it's right around there.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bates?
Yes, thank you. I think the whole privatization thing is something that, I mean, John was just saying he asks the question or asks a similar question every year. And I guess for the benefit of budgeting, you know, now and in the future, I guess what the first thing I would say is, I think it is an exercise we should be going through every year. And I agree with John. In fact, I mentioned this to you last meeting, where I don't think it's a case of all versus nothing. I think it's actually a privatization option for Canardville area versus having our own services in the village should be looked at
Hey, Bill?
as a viable option. But I also believe, Chief, that having an apples to apples comparison ready budget committee each year based on a request for information that goes out each year should be a normal part of what we do as a town. This is a good business practice. I'm not saying that you necessarily want to go to the privatization model, either part, in part, or in whole.
Bill? Hey, Bill?
But I think it's
Bill, can you hear me?
Yes.
Bill?
Yep.
One of the things, we spent a lot of time on privatization, and one of the things that I came down with, it, I'm looking for a budget ramification. Do you have something that's gonna help the taxpayers save some money or cost it some, I'm looking for an appropriation tie-in?
Yes. So my premise is when we talk about EMS services paying for themselves, I'm not sure if that's true, and this is why. I don't think the full pass-through cost of the wear and tear on the vehicles that ultimately end up being big-ticket items, I don't think we're paying for that. If we're truly passing through and saying that the services are truly paying for themselves, I think we need to have an honest discussion about whether or not that's paying for the wear and tear, but ultimately the vehicles that go downhill as part of wear and tear. And I don't think you can answer that question in the affirmative. And by the way, Chief, I didn't expect you to. But what I'm saying is, I think we need to factor in the wear and tear on the vehicles and the drain on the taxpayer as part of the exercise here, number one. Number two, if we keep it as is, if we keep it the way it works right now, I guess I would maintain to get better at budgeting this year and the years beyond, why aren't we thinking about a per call surcharge based on wear and tear on vehicles that could be accounted for in some kind of protected fund for future vehicle purchase? So I guess that's where I was going with it.
So which particular vehicles are you talking about, Bill? The ambulance is being paid for. what other vehicles, there's about, right now, $48,000 for reimbursement to the general fund through the EMS. You think that should be higher because of something else?
I just think that to smooth out the shock and ultimately the torture the chief has to go through when vehicles are coming to end of life, that it may make sense to consider a vehicle surcharge per call and try to smooth that out for the taxpayer.
Actually, it is, and it's not the taxpayer themselves. Right now, there is a surcharge, and there is $190,000 in the bank today to buy the ambulance. They've done that over the last 5 years with surcharges, and so there's not gonna be any ramifications to the taxpayers. This is all related to service fees from actually the last 3 years, I think. I think we bought one 3 years ago, didn't we, Chief?
We bought one in
But I mean, the
2008.
same model could be said of fire calls.
The what fund?
Fire calls.
No, fire calls are, no. We don't charge the taxpayers for fire calls that I'm aware of.
No.
So the only thing you could do is put something in the budget that's called a capital reserve fund, which we actually did, and last year or the year before was not approved by the voters.
2 years, yeah, 2 years running.
We had 2 years, running that it wasn't, so, but we do have 143 left from the one from a few years ago.
Right.
Okay.
Scott has something he
Okay.
wants to add to that, Bill. Hang on.
It's interesting that you say that, Bill, because in my former job, I used to see these bills all the time. And I know that, like, a Rockingham will do their level of care, and then they'll do a mileage charge. I don't know what our bills look like, but do we do the same exact thing?
We do. We actually, we built to the Medicare standard, which is, in the past, they used to clump down. We used to bill everything from oxygen to airways to, you name it. We're splitting the duck down and a mileage. Now with Medicare, you clump it to the level of care provided, whether it's a basic life support call or an advanced life support call. And then the rates are changed by then, and then we bill mileage on top of that.
Okay, so the mileage technically accounts for the ambulance equipment piece.
The fuel and the upkeep of the vehicle.
And if I could just add one more thing, Nick shared with us at that one meeting that in Manchester, where they do have Rockingham, typically the fire engine does go out. Fire engine may even be the first one on the scene, and it's kind of like dual service, and then the fire department leaves while Rockingham kind of takes over.
Right.
And I think when privatization in this particular case, I think we're still going to have that 30, 40, 50% of the time where the engine has to go out anyway due to based upon the nature of the call.
Correct.
Right.
In the location. It could be a situation where knowing a private service, that they may be located, coming from Manchester.
I just want to let you know, Bill, I'm not adverse to doing a study, as I'll bring this back to the board. We have talked about it informally, and I don't think it would hurt to do it. And certainly we can try to do that maybe next year. One of the things that I've learned, though, is that when we try to price things out every single year just to get a pulse, after a while, when you don't give somebody the job, they don't want to bid anymore. So you got to be kind of careful with that one. But I think it's a good idea to just to see and price it out. I don't think it could hurt.
All right, I'm going to let Bill, you have some more questions, Bill?
Yeah, just one more, and I would only say that you've answered the question. That's fine. I would only say that each year the exercise should be, are we sure we're charging all we can on a per service call basis to make sure we're covering as much as we can for the next big capital purchase. And I think because of the way costs go upward, it seems, that, and maybe calls go up, that it's a good business practice to get into to make sure that we're getting to end of life on vehicles. It's good to know that. And number two, it's just, I mean, how many times can you go out with tin cup in hand? I think it's just better for you all the way around when it comes time to go through the torture of asking the taxpayer for another vehicle, that's all. The only other thing I had was, so I've got the numbers in front of me, and I don't expect this information tonight. If it can come later on after the fact, that would be good. I'm curious about the, you provided us in the presentation a pie chart having to do with calls. I'm interested in trying to relate calls to expense on wages on a call basis and the trending here. So I'm just wondering what kind of trending information could the committee get that would help us to do some comparatives, 2006 or 2007 forward in terms of calls, or dispatched calls, and ultimately how that impacted the related wage expenditures, and whether or not we could get some kind of trending there on what's been going on as we try to make decisions this year. And with that, I'm done with my questions.
Okay.
So we're looking for a estimated cost per call, in general, from maybe budget, looking at personnel costs from 2007 and date, is that what you're looking for?
Did you hear the question, Bill?
Yeah, something like that. I guess I'm trying to get a sense of, as we've moved toward, as we've gone to having full-time firefighters and ultimately the cost that the taxpayer bears, just understanding what the trend has been in terms of calls, call traffic over the last 4 years, and so we can factor in costs and see and try to make some kind of determinations based on trends.
Okay, so you're not actually looking for a cost per, you're just looking at the trends of how many calls have been, how much out-of-station activity, if I can call it that, has occurred?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
And it'd be tough, we can show that, but the cost of doing business changes every year. For example, we get money back for doing ambulance transports, and for example, during the ice storms and the other disasters, we receive FEMA reimbursement for the cost of doing business there too, so, or a percentage of it, maybe 80% or so. So, we can just give you some generalized trends. It may not be totally exact though.
Okay. If you would note that, that'd be good. Scott,
I
do you
guess
need to add?
my question is that, similar, just for protocol purposes, similar to each individual budget committee member does not have any more authority than the group as a whole, right?
The group has the
So if this
authority.
group wants that information, and it's no disrespect to Bill, but
I
if
understand.
the group wants the information, then the chief can put it together, but
Yeah, I
we
think
could
what I
all
did
want
as-
our own pieces of
As a
it.
chair,
Right.
I think what I did was I kind of inferred to the chief that I would like to see the information. I think it's been presented to us before, and
Yeah.
not that you're doing a whole lot of work. I mean, if you're gonna have to take a whole lot of work to go back that many years, then it might not be, but if it's something you can put together for us, because I think trending is what I've heard a lot of people
And
like
I'm
to see.
fine with that, I'm curious to know, like, is this like a whole day activity for you? Is this an hour? I mean,
Probably an hour. What you're gonna see,
Okay.
in fact, just looking
I'm
at
good.
me, looking
I'm
at me,
good.
yeah.
I'm good. It sounded like it was more than that. I'm
Our
fine.
calls are outpacing the budget, so the price per call is actually probably going down over time, you're probably gonna see.
Right, I think there's a lot, look, we'll just take a peek at that kind of thing. Was your hand up next?
Good, I got my answer.
I had a quick question.
Christie?
Going back to the hydrant. That number seems so high, $171,000.
$656.
Yeah, could the fire department flush and do the maintenance on the outside of the hydrant to reduce cost of
Again, it's not our property to do that. So unfortunately, we probably couldn't even go there.
Why is it so much higher this year?
We added more in Lynchville Daniels Park.
Litchfield Daniels Park, there was at least 16 more hydrants, and the rates for Manchester went up 6%.
Okay, thanks.
But Grassmere stayed the same.
Grassmere, and I
Thank
believe
you.
Village is holding.
It just seems like you're hiring labor to do that. We have the firefighters that know how to do that. We have the snow removal equipment.
That's a presumption,
Oh, is it?
that the firefighters know how to, I mean, I'm not sure what it takes to flush, but I'm sure it's looking at the hydrant, making sure the seals are correct, the bolts are tight, I mean, painting it, I mean, I would love to see them out there with their paintbrush in their full gear with maybe their SCBA.
It's been a long
equipment on.
time since I figured out a coefficient for a fire hydrant, but,
I'm just trying to reduce the cost. It just
Understand.
seems like, there's enough
If there's one way
manpower there
to,
to do it. They know what they're doing. We have the equipment to do it. Why pay someone else for that labor?
I'm not sure we have the personnel to do what I'm saying is, I know we have firefighters who know how to plug in and turn that knob on the top to make the water flow.
Correct.
If that's the simple thing to flush a fire hydrant, is you take the cover off, you don't put the hose and you spin the on button.
They're
That's
doing
the French
maintenance
way
on
of saying it.
cisterns, and there's not, I mean, there's some similarities there. I mean, I saw them do it outside my house a few weeks ago. I mean,
Well-
they do a lot of,
Bill had his hand up and I'd like to hear.
I can tell you, Christie, our guy who does the work does not get benefits. He's a 20-hour-a-week employee. And we want to shudder at what kind of money he makes, not much.
No,
Plus drives
it
his
just
own
seems like there's an
vehicle.
overlapping of,
Yeah.
of people that could do it, and we're paying them. I don't know.
Well, DPW,
I-
I mean, how about the administrative
No,
staff upstairs?
DPW, I
I'm-
think
know
should be
being-
involved too, because we're paying DPW, Oh, well, it's just
Well, we can
trying
talk
to think
about it. We
outside
can
the
talk.
box,
It's
reduce
a
a
good
little
box.
cost.
There's a different way of reducing
Yeah,
that
yeah.
cost.
You know?
There's a
Yeah,
different
yeah.
way of reducing it. Here's another idea of reducing the cost. You zero it out of this budget, and the water districts say, what am I gonna do to balance my budget? Service fees goes up. Everybody who pays a water bill pays a little more. That's how, the only thing that I can see of making that go down with the current methodology that's being used. Okay, someone's gonna have to pay for it because these are all municipal waterworks. They're only allowed to charge certain sums. And they don't have stockholders, so to speak. So if the Grassmere Water District, if we said, hey, this is all you're gonna get is $350 per hydrant, they are gonna have to go back and say, what I'm gonna do with the other $57 per hydrant that I was thinking I was gonna get for revenue? I'm gonna have to get it from someplace else. So you do that, multiplying by the 45, 46, or 47 hydrants, times the $57, that goes up, divided by the total number of customers I have, so to speak, and you have an increase in service fees. It's a mathematical formula. Might be a different way, but that's what I'm thinking, is the only other alternative. John?
Just following up what Christie said, and I just want to say that, maybe the selectmen think that an increased budget over last year is, even if it's a little bit, is okay, and department heads think that a little bit of budget increase is okay, and that seems like the trend that we kind of want to go to, but I can just assure you that the mood out there of the voters is not necessarily agreeing with that philosophy. And I think in the spirit of the people that are going to be voting on this in the spring, it's our duty to present them with a budget, with at least have them in mind when it comes to presenting numbers. And I
I do
think
have a question for the chief.
no.
Okay, sorry, John. I had to keep this, we're here to
Yes, can we
inquire of the
reduce the
chief.
budget by a little bit?
Well, that's the same question we
Can we
asked
reduce the
Chief
budget by a
Sullivan.
little bit?
If you had to come in with a level fund, we're talking about
in
not
effect,
quite $4,000.
in effect, we did go level fund. We were $8,000, the Board of Selectmen's budget was $8,000 over 2010. And we're taking in $8,000 more from the EMS end of it. You see, it was $40,000 last year, it's now up to $48,000. So in a sense, it's
The offsetting revenue is
The
the net
offsetting-
effect to the taxpayer.
Correct.
Is actually a little lower. Again, we have to gross appropriate.
Correct.
Okay.
So in effect,
Okay.
we're at the 2010 levels right now. Unfortunately, going through the drill of getting there, we cut significantly line by line in the operations and the end of it, just to try to maintain our services that we currently provide now. And it's our personnel. We did still cut $20,000 out of overtime, and we're still trying to figure out where we're gonna get that, so we don't have to cut services so much. But if you go line by line, you'll see that significant cuts were made in our operations end of it.
Further questions for the chief?
I
Did
just,
did you have something, Bill?
can I ask one final question?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Bill.
So, I thought Christie had a good idea. But I'm just curious, the cost, is that like an annual cost, or is that based on some kind of frequency each year? As far as the fire hydrant line item?
I did not understand you, Bill. I don't know if anyone else did. If they did, could they?
Talking about the fire hydrants, he said that Christie had a good idea.
What was your
Is there a
question?
frequency, does that cost include a frequency for doing that hydrant work each year?
How many times did they have to flush it and maintain it once a year, or?
We flush it every year.
Once?
I am not exactly clear on how often. Keith Moore, our superintendent, is constantly running around and shutting the valve off, taking the caps off, lubing them, putting them back on. He does that more than once a year.
Okay.
And the only way that I could see to cut down expenses, like let's say on the snow removal, is do a town ordinance that requires the property owner that abuts it is responsible for cleaning it. And that's done in many, many, many towns.
Yes, it is.
I'm not sure. Have you guys broached on a select board? I'm not sure that's legal. Just like saying you have to shovel the sidewalk in front of your house. I don't think that's legal.
The sidewalk, that is not.
Yeah, maybe a state law, but in other states, I lived in Minnesota for a while. We had to shovel the hydrant and shovel 600 foot of frontage
That I know.
sidewalk.
That I know.
Yeah,
that-
We won't have that here
Yeah, it may,
in the state
don't think that'll pass the legislature.
this year.
All right.
Do it.
Did that answer your question, Bill?
Yeah, I guess it does. That's fine. My only final thing is, in the context of the budget, I think it's unfortunate that the whole 10% exercise, in my opinion, wasn't taken too seriously or wasn't communicated effectively enough.
I take exception to that,
As it
Bill.
relates to this budget,
Hold on.
I guess what I would say to the chief and all department heads is the whole point to why we're doing it this way, and to John's point a moment ago, is we need to do a better job of connecting the budgets each year to the economy that we all live in. And that's the point that directly relates to the exercise we're trying to get to over the next 7 weeks and months, is we can't keep budgeting irrespective of the economy we live in. And sometimes that's what me and other people in the economy of Goffstown feel like is being missed here. That there's no connection between the economy we're all suffering in and the money you want.
All right, do you have a budget question, Bill?
We're trying to do it this way and trying to convey this year a 10% number to go through, is to try to connect the share of what we're all going through as taxpayers.
Hey, Bill, the chief did explain where he was gonna go with that 10%, Bill. Do you have another question for the chief?
No, I was trying to make the point of connecting the economy to the budget
Right,
process this year.
that's for the debate, when we go into debate mode. Our purpose for the meeting tonight and for next Tuesday is to further inquire of the department heads unanswered questions. Huh? I didn't,
Thursday.
it's not Thursday next week, it's Tuesday. Did I say Thursday?
No, you said Tuesday.
It's Tuesday next week, not Thursday. Next Thursday's a holiday. It's Tuesday.
I hope it's Tuesday.
We're meeting next Tuesday.
Thursday is better.
I have to
I
work.
can't,
Okay, well, we'll go over that after anyway.
I got a last question.
Go ahead, Guy.
Maybe the question is more for Scott than you, Chief. Aren't retirement and benefits lines tied to contractual obligations?
Yes.
Yes.
How did you guys then reduce both those lines from the chief's request? I'm just curious
Scott,
how you were,
If I could probably,
for example, benefits, you came in asking for 339, it ended up at 313. How do you do
Right.
that if you have,
initially, I believe when I was tasked to put together my budget, typically we put together a budget that includes a 2% COLA for non-unionized personnel, and,
non-union?
okay,
Okay,
so that, again, was adjusted during
that
the,
explains it then.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
We also did,
Plus, the overtime pay is
reduced cap.
reduced, and the overall net salary total is less. So the calculation for retirement would be less for those who would earn that particular benefit.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
Further questions for the chief? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming and answering our questions.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
I do not have any, Sue DeRusso would like to know if you guys had any specific questions for her, that I could relay them to her so she could be more prepared to answer the questions.
Yeah, we need to get the
Right.
debt service into the sheets.
That's
I sent
not
it some.
necessarily a question for her, but Scott sent me an email during the
Okay.
meeting tonight, we might have something here. I do see debt service in section 8. So if you go into section 8, it's there, it's not sitting up in
Do you
the.
want me to provide you the numbers? I can do it.
No, I've already done it in my own copy of the admin spreadsheet, which I can send.
But do you
The numbers are,
do you have the actual numbers? I can give it to you.
yeah, I've got them, because I've got the,
I want a vacation.
um,
I'm going.
the debt service sheet that we got from the town, and those numbers are correct.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that the admin budget itself is
Yeah.
a separate spreadsheet.
Right.
Those numbers are all reading
Right.
zero, and that misled me at first.
Right.
And I think that happens every year, because debt service is pulled out into the debt service section.
It happened last year, remember?
Yes,
Because I
it
thought
moved
the
around,
town
yeah.
had made a 5% reduction, and I
Right,
thought
okay.
everybody else
Okay.
did.
All right.
And it turns out it was,
Okay.
they were in the, so when you look at the admin sheet.
Okay, next,
Not so young.
on Tuesday, we're going to, what are we doing next Tuesday? And it is Tuesday.
We're doing DPW and admin.
It is DPW and admin, and if there's anything else, I think we had already done Parks and Rec, and there was anything on library, so we can finish that up on Tuesday. If we've got
6:30.
anything. 6:30 we start again. One of the things I'm interested in completing, because next Tuesday, thanks Chief, will be 6:30 we start, we're trying to end somewhere around 9:30, we can go to 10 if we need to. Don't forget, we meet here on Saturday, the 13th at 9, and that'll be working with the school board for them, and they're gonna present the school budget to us. For anyone who didn't come in earlier, on the table, you see in front of me, next to Bill, did you get your copy of the budget, Bill, for the school? All right, and John, you'll need to get a copy of that before you go. Take that, peruse through it, I will ask to see if I can get an electronic copy.
About the Saturday,
20 minutes.
Yep.
is it gonna be like the last Saturday we were all here
Yes.
for all day? So.
That
we
I'm
wo-
aware of.
And then we're gonna have everybody come in anyways? Because I thought the
Depends
Saturday
on what
was
that
gonna
Saturday-
eliminate that.
Depends what that Saturday does. Depends if we get all of our questions in, you have the books now, you've got over a week to look at the books, so if you have some of these questions and you wanna get them through, why don't we just get them done that day? That's the purpose of that meeting, and then we wouldn't have to.
Well, that's true,
Bring
but
them back.
with the department head meetings,
Yeah,
they limited the time, so we were
Yeah.
restricted on the questions.
okay.
Now, what happens if the town does that? I mean, I just,
What happens if school does that? We'll have to bring them in.
well, why don't we just have them come in then, instead of waste a Saturday, like we did that day?
because I think there were some, did everyone get a
You know what,
benefit?
can I just stop here for a second?
No, you can't.
No, because, no, we're saying
no, Scott,
wasted time.
Scott,
Spent a lot of
no,
time preparing
Scott,
that.
no,
Because it just didn't accomplish
Scott.
what you wanted.
Scott,
You know, a lot of people didn't even know what was in those
Scott.
budgets.
How many times do I have to say Scott?
Well, you know
Come on,
what?
Scott.
When you speak disrespectfully, you get that.
Scott, you're a chair of a
think
board
we're
yourself.
talking
You,
to
you
the
should honor what the
openly.
chair would like to do
No offense
and
to
go
you,
through
Dan.
it. I will come back to you. I've been fair. Does this group rather, I got some benefit out of being here that Saturday, to hear and to see the presentation. Do we have a general feeling that you didn't? Or was it enhancing, even though we had additional questions we had to ask? I mean, I think we can get some benefit from going with the plan.
But could we get more
Hang on, please. Is
No,
that good
I-
for everyone?
Well, I thought it was definitely beneficial, definitely had value.
Yeah.
Got presentations to us and,
Yeah.
you know, information up in front of us, that was very helpful.
We have a lot of people on this committee who have a lot of other questions. If there were 3 people, it would have been a lot, but 16 people asking questions takes time.
Got the ball rolling.
And if we were not to have the Saturday, I don't believe we would have been able to get through asking each chief all the questions we wanted to in 90 minutes. I mean, we've done other things, and I can tell you the years. This is my 8th time with the town. We have spent, in past years, an unbelievable amount of time going through all of this, okay? So there is some benefit, I do believe. And so I think we would work in that method to have that Saturday. Because with the experience I think we've had, I think I'm willing to give it a shot. And I think some of us here agree we would do that. Scott, did you want to?
No, I think we had, I believe, 5 new budget committee members. It was a good overview of it. As you said, Dan, in the past, we would spend at least one night with the police chief, another night with the fire chief, another night with Carl. So, you know, I think, and then sometimes it was callbacks after that.
Yeah,
I'm
there were
not saying it was
5-6 nights
perfect.
with
And I know
callbacks.
that there were some of you who wanted more. And you didn't get exactly what you wanted, but I thought for the majority of everyone, especially for the new folks, it was a good, we try to give an overview of what each department does.
Mhm.
And that was the intent, a lot of time was spent to put into it, so, and if the school does the same thing, there's a lot of, the school's even harder, in my opinion. Having been on the school board, I mean, the school, I think, is twice as hard.
There's a lot to it. Yes, Kathy, then I'm going to come back to you.
Okay, thanks. In regards to the Saturday that we had for the town, I think for some of the people, and I will include myself in this, I think that if you're someone that watches the Board of Selectmen's meeting and you got to see the people present, some of it was a little bit redundant for us. It was information that we already knew about. We knew what DPW does, the police, and all that kind of stuff. So for that, I think that was a little bit redundant. Had I known that, you know, that was gonna be there, and I could have work that day, I think I would have probably watched it on demand as opposed to actually being there that day. I do believe that there was good information that was given, and especially for the newer people, I think that it was really beneficial. Because in the years past, a lot of us had all gone to all the selectmen's meeting, so we did hear from all the different department heads, and I found that to be very beneficial, but very time-consuming. So, that's my 2
That-
cents.
Right, that reminded me, John, one of the things we didn't do this year is go to 5 selectmen's meetings.
Right.
Which we have in the past. That had been, and what we've done in the past, if I go back 4 years, we went to each one of the selectmen's meeting, then we had each department head come back for their own night.
Right.
Then we had more questions after that. We probably did a good 10, 11 separate nights just hearing questions before we even get into deliberation. So having that one day took away us having to come out 5 or 6 Monday nights for an hour or an hour and a half, depending on what the budget presentation was. So that did help a little bit. So go ahead, you had your hand up.
Well, before Scott had his meltdown and interrupted, I believe we should be able to have open speech here. So, and I wasn't attacking Scott. I know they put a lot of time in, so I find it offensive that he did this.
You said it was a waste of time,
Let
John.
let him,
That's what you
I'm
said.
not gonna
That
go
was
into
your quote. It was a
conversation.
waste
if I
of my
need to.
time.
Everyone has a right to be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let me
in-
finish.
In sequence, if we can, please.
Is what I was wondering, and this is where I was going before I was rudely interrupted, was,
All right, now, one thing I'm gonna ask everybody to do, okay, if we're gonna come into a conversation here, let's please do the conversation and keep the alliteration out, all right? I know we can
You're right.
call it, okay, go.
where I was going was so you guys could explain, because I am new.
Mhm.
So I wanted to hear the explanation. Would it be beneficial to the new guys or all of us old guys to have the chief come in and give the presentation like he did on that Saturday? And then everything is fresh in our minds. And then we have the budget in front of us and then go through and ask the questions. That's where I was going. I wasn't saying Saturday was a total waste. I wanted to get clarification of why we were here and why we're gonna come back on Saturday for the school. That's where I was going.
Okay. One of the things that we've done in the past, we've tried it, a lot of different ways, and I think we've been getting better every year. I think this year, I mean, I was talking to my wife about that, and I was saying, I was home for those 5 Mondays. I didn't actually expect to watch the Board of Selectmen to actually do what they did, because we were usually there at the table asking the same kind of questions. I thought it was beneficial for the selectmen not to have us there, because I believe they got more into doing what they do with their department heads. This year, I believe the school board did almost the same. They spent more days this year, I believe, than they have in a number of the other years, working with the department heads, with the SAU, to come up with numbers and budgets and things. They can now take that and present it to us in one day. We have the budgets, what they're gonna present to us in that Tuesday. Let them come in, let us give our thing, let us get our questions. If we have time, let's get those questions out. And then we're still gonna come back for those meetings, but I think what is gonna help us is get some ability to know the questions we wanna ask and potentially get into debate. Making motions quicker and get it done quicker, or maybe not having to come out twice a week. That's where and it's
All right, that's what I wanted
depending
to
on the
hear.
day, depending on the number of questions that come out.
All right.
Did you have something, Scott, you wanted to add?
Can we get those electronically, Dan?
We have not yet. I need to send a request, to get those electronically, and I will attempt to do that, today or tomorrow. Bill?
Dan, I believe Chairman Allard said they'll be sending that electronically to you on Friday.
Oh, that would be tomorrow.
Good.
Oh, good. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, and once I get it, I will probably unchanged, just send it right off to you guys, because I haven't been able to audit or edit any of these things prior to sending them to you. It just hasn't had the time. Excuse me, Kathy?
Just to confirm, you just made a comment a little bit ago that the school board budget committee meeting on Saturday was at 9 o'clock. I have written in my book 8:30. I
Yes,
just
you
want to
did.
confirm.
They-
It's 9 o'clock?
Sue changed in one meeting, said, we talked about it at the school board, and it was 9 o'clock. And so, I said, okay, we'll do 9 o'clock.
Okay, so 9 o'clock
9
here.
o'clock here,
Here.
that Saturday, this room. We'll probably set up the room. I still need to call them and see how do they wanna set it up. I mean, I'll show them, how the town did it. We'll put the extra tables out there. Just be able to do.
Next
No, it's a
Saturday.
week. It's, the Saturday after the
13th.
holiday. It should be the 13th, correct?
13th.
The 13th, 9 o'clock. Next Tuesday night, we meet here, because the 11th is a holiday, so the 9th is Tuesday, 6:30 here, okay?
And did you send us a calendar of?
Oh,
what-
yeah.
You did,
Oh,
okay.
yeah. I sent you a calendar up through our
21st?
our meeting on the 21st. On the 21st, we'll have a better idea, having the Saturday 13th.
Do you know when you sent that? Just so I can
Oh,
look.
after the last Tuesday meeting, I mean,
So I just-
monthly
I got
meeting
one,
last
yeah.
month.
So I
Yeah,
wanna
okay.
fill it in.
And these meetings are open to the public, so if they wanna.
All the meetings are open to the public.
Right, all the meetings, so if they wanna
can
come
watch it
down
on
here,
the
there's,
web.
right, they can come down here and join us on Saturday morning or
And when you
any
say,
Tuesday night,
I
and give
got-
us your input.
yeah,
Thursday.
no, John,
Well, come down
No.
and watch us.
no. RSA 91A makes the meetings public, okay? It does not give the public a right to participate in the meetings.
Correct.
These budget meetings are for the budget committee. Our monthly meetings are to get input from the public. We have the time in there for public input. When we have the public hearing, that is the biggest time that we wanna hear from the public. Also, if we're in the market or on the street, that's the time where you can talk to any of us. If we don't wanna talk to you, we'll tell you, but let me know if any of us tell you that, but it could be something. Scott?
Do you want your emails posted on the town website?
Mike?
Are, aren't they?
No.
No? Yeah, fine with me.
Do you want that?
Yeah. I don't. I get enough
Yeah, I get enough too.
unusual emails from people.
The reason why I asked was some citizens have said, you know what, I wanna communicate with the budget committee as to what is being sent and.
Town email addresses.
Yes.
Ah, that's different. I don't know. I mean, it's
I have no objection, phone number or email, put them there.
goffstownbudget@comcast.net.
That goes to Dan.
Yeah, and it could go
And then-
through everyone.
And then,
Yeah,
then
that
it goes
goes
to
to
everybody.
That would be a
Well,
good
it'd
way
come
to
to
do it.
me, and then I could
Forward it.
disperse it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Oh, it goes to you and not,
goffstownbudget@comcast.net.
oh, that's right, that's your
I own
person,
it.
okay.
I own that one.
I'll see if we can get one also set up. Maybe
Yeah,
from the
because we
town.
could also set a group
thing.
email if you want, that's
Exactly.
sitting on the website, that people, if they wanted to ask questions, they could do it, and if we had some time and go through it, I'll get there, Kathy.
I think that I was making faces at you.
You had your hand up, you wanted to say something.
Well, since Janice isn't gonna be here on Saturday, can we have them make sure that the heat, because if you noticed, during our meeting on Saturday, she kept on going to turn up the heat. It gets really cold in here, and it was really
And
cold.
can we ask that question
Where's
to our
the heat,
selectmen
where is the
rep?
heat,
There's a key thing that she has to use over there.
oh,
So on Saturday, it's gonna be kind of chilly in here.
It's not this Saturday, though.
No, next
So
Saturday.
you shouldn't wear shorts or something like that?
No.
on Tuesday.
what?
Can we get some heat next week?
Trying to keep the fuel costs down.
There goes the budget.
Oh, I see. I understand how
Can I
that
make a
works.
motion to adjourn?
Actually, it would heat up.
I didn't hear the motion.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
I'll
please?
second it.
Wait a minute. You have something?
No, I was gonna second that.
Oh, you can't, it's already been second. Christie made a motion to adjourn, and Guy seconded it. All in favor, signify by raising your hand, please. That's unanimous, thank you very much. Thank you.